What if the stories we thought we knew were only shadows of the truth? Across centuries, civilizations have risen and vanished, leaving behind clues that defy explanation. From ancient cities buried beneath shifting sands to enigmatic artifacts that challenge our understanding of history, some mysteries refuse to yield their secrets. Who built the Great Pyramids with such precision? What lies hidden beneath the waters of forgotten civilizations? And how do the events in lands like Palestine connect to puzzles that still haunt us today? So sit back, relax, and let's dive into history's biggest mysteries. In a quiet museum tucked away in the heart of Japan, under the soft, almost reverent glow of display lights, rests a sword unlike any other, the Norimitsu Odachi. Its steel blade stretches over 3.5 meters, an astonishing expanse of polished iron that seems almost alive with a latent power. The weight alone would challenge the strength of any ordinary warrior, yet it gleams with a precision and artistry that speaks of centuries of meticulous craftsmanship. Visitors often pause, captivated, not just by its size, but by the questions it silently raises. Who could have possibly wielded such a weapon, and why was it ever made? The Odachi, or Great Sword, emerged during Japan's medieval period, around the 15th century, a time of intense conflict, shifting allegiances, and rigid codes of honor. Swords of this era were not mere instruments of war. They were symbols, extensions of a samurai's spirit. Yet the Norimitsu Odachi defies conventional understanding. Ordinary katana, or even larger tachi swords, were already deadly in the hands of a trained warrior. But this sword seems designed for a superhuman strength, its blade longer and heavier than any standard battlefield weapon. Some scholars suggest it was intended for ceremonial purposes, a display of power meant to awe allies and intimidate enemies. Others hint at a more practical, though perplexing, battlefield function, perhaps wielded from horseback or against massed troops in carefully orchestrated formations. The craftsmanship itself deepens the mystery. The blade's curvature is precise, its steel layered with techniques that would challenge even the most skilled smiths of the period. The hilt and mounting, proportioned to support a reach far beyond ordinary arms, suggest an understanding of mechanics that seems almost modern in its sophistication. And yet, historical records provide frustratingly little context. There are no definitive accounts of battles where this sword swung with devastating effect, no chronicles celebrating a warrior who mastered its mass. It exists largely in isolation, a singular marvel, leaving historians to puzzle over its purpose and origin. Speculation has naturally grown around such an extraordinary object. Could the Norimitsu Odachi have been a showpiece, a symbol of a clan's ambition and wealth? Perhaps, but even ceremonial swords rarely required such extreme dimensions. Others propose that it was a challenge or rite of passage for elite samurai, a test of strength, skill, and endurance, wielding the blade a feat that would earn the wielder legendary status. Some fringe theories extend even further, suggesting that the sword was intended for a warrior with augmented capabilities, hinting at lost martial techniques, or even extraordinary physiques now vanished from history. These ideas are tantalizing, though impossible to prove, yet they persist because the object itself demands more than simple explanation. Traveling beyond the museum, one can trace the Odachi's lineage through sketches, miniature replicas, and fragmented scrolls. Each source provides hints of ritual, performance, or battlefield spectacle, yet none fully reconcile the blade's existence with human capability. The sword's presence challenges assumptions about medieval warfare, weapon design, and even the limits of physical human achievement. Could there have been warriors strong enough, trained enough, to swing it with lethal precision? If so, what kind of society nurtured such skill? And if not, Why commission a weapon that seems almost impractical, bordering on the mythical? As we linger in the quiet shadows of this museum hall, the Norimitsu Odachi offers no answers, only questions. Its steel reflects the dim light, almost as if it knows the curiosity it inspires. Was it meant to inspire fear, awe, devotion, or some combination of all three? And what of the generations that held it, even briefly, before its story faded into fragments? The sword remains a silent witness to a past that resists full comprehension, a reminder that some histories, no matter how tangible, retain an air of mystery. As we leave behind the towering Norimitsu Odachi, with its silent questions of strength, skill, and lost techniques, we turn now to a mystery that is more than metal and might. Here, in a dimly lit corner of a vast Egyptian collection, rests a figure that challenges our understanding of death, suffering, and human expression. The mummy known as Unknown Man E, more hauntingly remembered as the Screaming Mummy. Unlike the polished steel of the Odachi, this relic bears the weight of centuries in its flesh and bone, preserved in eerie detail, a frozen cry captured in time. The mummy lies supine in a coffin, its features so well preserved that the distorted expression on its face seems almost instantaneous, as though the individual had been caught mid-scream. The mouth is agape, the eyes hollow yet piercing, and the fingers are clenched in tension. Every wrinkle of the skin, every contortion, has been locked in place by the desiccating sands of Egypt, or perhaps by the chemicals used in embalming rituals long before modern science would understand them. It is a visage that is both deeply human and profoundly unsettling, a silent scream that has traversed more than 3 millennia. Unknown Man. E dates back to the late New Kingdom period, roughly around the 11th century BC, a time when Egypt was a complex tapestry of power struggles, shifting dynasties, and intricate religious rites. Unlike the renowned pharaohs whose tombs were constructed with painstaking precision, this individual's resting place is less grand, more austere, yet carefully sealed. Records suggest that his burial was intentional, methodical, yet something about the position of his body, the expression frozen in horror, signals that death here may not have been natural, or at least not peaceful. For decades, scholars have debated the identity of this mummy. Was he a nobleman, a priest, or a criminal executed under ritualistic circumstances? X-ray studies and examinations of the remains indicate trauma inconsistent with ordinary death. Fractures on the neck and shoulders, evidence of possible strangulation, and contortions suggest extreme suffering in his final moments. Yet, even with such forensic clues, the story remains incomplete. The Screaming Mummy refuses to yield a straightforward explanation, forcing historians and scientists alike to question, was this the result of murder, execution, or perhaps a religious punishment meant to prevent the dead from disturbing the living? The context of Egyptian funerary practices offers some clues and further puzzles. During this era, mummification was both an art and a science, designed to preserve the body for eternity and ensure the soul's journey in the afterlife. Typically, the deceased were treated with care, wrapped meticulously, and accompanied by funerary goods to secure a smooth passage. In this case, the care is evident in the preservation, but the pose is anomalous. Scholars note that most mummies are serene, their expressions neutral, or even peaceful. Unknown Man. E's agony is unique, a scream caught in amber, suggesting either a violent death immediately preceding burial, or perhaps a rare ritual designed to symbolically trap the soul. Mainstream explanations often focus on political intrigue. Some Egyptologists theorize that Unknown Man E could have been a victim of a palace coup, a rebel, or a wronged official whose execution was deliberately recorded in the body itself, a cautionary tale for others. Others point to ritualistic punishment. In some interpretations, those who violated sacred laws or committed grave offenses were buried in ways that would eternally silence them or mark their suffering. The peculiar tension in the body could have been intentional, an attempt to visually encode the manner of death for the living to witness. Yet, as with the Odachi, fringe theories have also emerged, because the human mind struggles to reconcile such visceral imagery with the distant past. Some suggest that unknown man-E's expression could be the result of unusual chemical reactions during mummification, or even a medical condition that caused muscular spasms at the moment of death. Others venture into darker speculations: ritualistic sacrifice, assassination by unknown conspirators, or even more esoteric ideas linking the mummy to curses, divine punishment, or the unsettled anger of the gods. These hypotheses remain unprovable, yet the physical evidence, the frozen scream, the contorted body, continues to fuel curiosity and debate. What makes this case even more compelling is the interplay between history and mystery. Here lies a man who existed in a world of pharaohs and priests, of wars and politics, whose life and death are partially documented, yet largely enigmatic. His body tells a story that no papyrus scroll or monument records. Unlike a sword, which can be measured, wielded, and tested, a scream captured in flesh transcends ordinary investigation. The more scientists uncover through imaging, chemical analysis, and historical context, the more questions seem to multiply. How did he die? Was his suffering accidental or deliberate? And why was his body preserved with such care, despite the evident horror of his final moments? Visitors to the exhibit often pause, staring at the contorted figure, caught between empathy and fear. There is an undeniable intimacy in the preserved features, as if the past itself has reached forward, insisting on being seen, acknowledged, and wondered about. Unknown Man E challenges our assumptions about death, human endurance, and the ways societies memorialize or punish the deceased. It is a story that exists in the gaps between certainty and speculation, a reminder that history is not only a record of events, but also a repository of mysteries that refuse to be neatly solved. As we move slowly past the screaming mummy, the questions linger. Who was this man? What final moments led to such a haunting visage? And, perhaps most unsettlingly, what might still be hidden among the countless other tombs, artifacts, and remnants of human history, waiting silently for the day when someone will dare to ask and wonder once more? Leaving behind the silent scream of Unknown Man E, we shift our gaze from the intimate horrors of human history to a colossal mystery carved in stone, standing silently against the Persian sun for millennia. At Naqsh-e Rostam, a vast necropolis etched into the cliffs near modern-day Iran, a figure both commanding and enigmatic watches over the tombs of kings. The Sphinx of Naqsh-e Rostam, its features weathered but unmistakable, projects an aura of authority and inscrutable intent. The lion's body stretches in repose, muscular yet immobile, while the human head, once finely detailed, hints at expression now blurred by centuries of wind, rain, and time itself. From afar, it appears almost alive, a silent sentinel guarding the tombs of the Achaemenid kings, whose reign spanned the 6th to 4th centuries BC. Yet closer inspection reveals anomalies that continue to puzzle historians and archaeologists. The proportions of the body are unusual, longer and broader than traditional Sphinx depictions, and the human head seems slightly smaller than expected, suggesting either a unique artistic convention or the passage of time's subtle distortions. Its location, carved directly into the cliffside rather than freestanding, adds to its solemnity and raises questions about its intended purpose. Was it merely decorative, a tribute to royal power, or a symbol of divine protection for the tombs below. The historical context offers some clues. Naqsh-e Rostam is renowned for its rock-cut tombs of Achaemenid rulers, including Darius I, Xerxes I, and Artaxerxes I. The necropolis was a place of ceremonial importance, a visible declaration of authority that linked earthly rulers to divine sanction. Sphinxes, blending human intelligence with animal strength, were common motifs across ancient Near Eastern and Egyptian cultures, representing vigilance, wisdom, and the protective power of the gods. Yet the Sphinx here is markedly different in both scale and subtle stylistic choices. Its gaze, directed toward the rising sun, and its strategic placement high above the valley, suggest more than mere symbolism. They hint at a deliberate interaction with natural elements, perhaps designed to mark astronomical events or serve ritualistic functions lost to history. Modern analysis deepens the mystery. Some scholars argue that the Sphinx may have been completed in stages, its upper body refined separately from its lower form, possibly reflecting evolving artistic or religious sensibilities. Others note subtle carvings and remnants of pigment that suggest the monument was once painted, a practice now largely vanished, but one that would have amplified its presence in daylight. Even more puzzling are faint inscriptions on the surrounding rock face, partially eroded, whose meaning remains elusive. Are they simple markers of ownership, prayers for the afterlife, or encoded messages intended for initiates of sacred knowledge? Speculative interpretations abound, fueled by the Sphinx's enigmatic qualities. Fringe theories propose that the monument may predate the Achaemenid era, potentially constructed by an earlier civilization whose memory was absorbed or obscured by later builders. Some suggest that its proportions indicate a deliberate encoding of astronomical knowledge, aligning with solstices, equinoxes, or the movements of distant stars. Others venture that the Sphinx represents not a king, but a deity whose identity has been lost, a guardian whose image survives while the details of belief have faded. These ideas cannot be verified, yet they endure because the monument itself invites contemplation and wonder. What is undeniable is the sense of presence that the Sphinx conveys. Unlike tombs, which often conceal their secrets within chambers and passageways, the Sphinx confronts the viewer directly. Its gaze, though eroded, exerts a subtle psychological pull, compelling reflection on power, mortality, and human aspiration. Visitors often report an unsettling awareness, as if the sculpture observes more than physical space, as though it holds memory or knowledge inaccessible to ordinary perception. The intersection of artistry, scale, and isolation creates an effect that no written account can fully capture, a quiet reminder that the past often communicates in shapes and shadows rather than words. The Sphinx also prompts broader questions about the cultural and technological sophistication of ancient societies. Carving a monument of such magnitude directly into rock required not only artistic skill, but a precise understanding of tools, leverage, and geology. How did ancient craftsmen achieve such balance, symmetry, and durability? Was there an unrecorded tradition of knowledge, architectural techniques, or symbolic conventions now lost to time? And if the Sphinx was intended to convey a message, astronomical, religious, or political, what does its survival tell us about the values and priorities of the people who created it? As we linger in the shadows of the cliffs at Naqsh-e Rostam, the Sphinx remains a bridge between the known and the unknowable. It connects the mortal with the divine, the tangible with the symbolic, and invites us to reconsider what is visible in history and what lies just beyond our perception. Its features, partially worn, partially preserved, remind us that time can reveal and conceal in equal measure. The mystery of its origin, purpose, and meaning remains intact, silently challenging every assumption, every explanation. And so, we are left with questions that extend far beyond the stone itself. Who conceived this guardian, and why was it placed so deliberately above the tombs of kings? Did it witness ceremonies, rites, or secrets that have vanished from the historical record? And might other monuments, scattered across valleys and cliffs, hold similar enigmas? Silent witnesses to civilizations whose knowledge and intentions we can only glimpse? The Sphinx of Naqsh-e Rostam endures not only as a marvel of ancient engineering, but as an enduring invitation to wonder, a reminder that some mysteries survive the ages precisely because they cannot be fully solved. From the silent stone gaze of the Sphinx at Naqsh-e Rostam, we move now to a mystery preserved not in rock, but in fragile, crumbling fragments of parchment. Hidden for millennia in the arid caves near the Dead Sea, these ancient manuscripts are collectively known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, a collection of writings so profound, so enigmatic, that they continue to challenge our understanding of history, religion, and human thought. As we enter the dimly lit archives where the scrolls are carefully preserved, the air seems to hum with the weight of untold stories, each fragment whispering secrets that time itself has struggled to conceal. The scrolls are delicate, some barely more than brittle strips of animal skin, inscribed with ink that has survived more than 2,000 years. Their discovery, beginning in 1947 near Qumran in what is now Palestine, sent shockwaves through both archaeology and theology. Scholars found texts that ranged from copies of books familiar from the Hebrew Bible to previously unknown writings, commentaries, hymns, and apocalyptic prophecies, offering glimpses into the lives, beliefs, and struggles of the people who composed them between the 3rd century BC and the 1st century AD. Yet, despite decades of study, much about the scrolls remains shrouded in mystery. The conditions of their preservation are remarkable. Hidden in caves carved into limestone cliffs, the scrolls were shielded from the elements, their fragile surfaces protected by layers of dust and sand. Some texts were painstakingly restored, pieced together like enormous, delicate jigsaw puzzles. In reading them, researchers encounter not only words, but questions. Why were these writings hidden? Who took the risk to conceal them, and what were they protecting? Knowledge, doctrine, or perhaps even warnings meant only for select eyes? Among the scrolls are texts that align closely with known biblical manuscripts, confirming the transmission of sacred writings over centuries. Others, however, are more enigmatic. They describe sects, practices, and beliefs that diverge sharply from mainstream traditions, hinting at communities whose understanding of divinity, law, and prophecy existed at the fringes of recorded history. Some scrolls detail apocalyptic visions, foretelling upheavals, celestial events, and cosmic battles that scholars interpret as metaphors. But metaphors for what? Political unrest, spiritual truths, or something even more obscure? The very act of hiding these texts invites speculation. Mainstream theories suggest that the scrolls were concealed by the Essenes, a sect living near Qumran, during a period of Roman expansion and societal unrest. Perhaps they feared the destruction of their teachings, or sought to protect sacred knowledge from misuse. Yet the caves themselves raise questions. Some were deliberately sealed, others are tucked into narrow crevices nearly impossible to access, suggesting a level of care and planning that implies the contents were considered supremely important. Why these locations? And what messages were deemed too dangerous or too precious to leave exposed? Deciphering the scrolls has also revealed puzzling linguistic and textual anomalies. Variations in spelling, grammar, and syntax sometimes diverge from what would later become standardized Hebrew or Aramaic. Some scholars propose that these differences indicate multiple authors or distinct communities, each with its own interpretation of scripture and ritual. Others suggest that certain passages were intentionally coded, layered with symbolic meaning that only initiates could fully understand. Could it be that hidden within the scrolls are instructions, insights or warnings meant to transcend generations, intended to be discovered only when the world was ready? Fringe interpretations have naturally arisen, fueled by the scroll's dramatic aura and historical context. Some researchers speculate about lost knowledge, connections to secret societies, or even forbidden prophecies that challenge conventional understanding of human history. Others suggest that astronomical codes, calendrical systems, or hidden numerical patterns may be embedded in the text, waiting for modern techniques to unlock them. While these ideas cannot be confirmed, the scrolls themselves refuse to be silent, their fragmented lines urging inquiry, analysis, and imagination. The human element of the scrolls is equally compelling. Each fragment, no matter how small, represents the labor of an individual or community. Scribes who meticulously copied, annotated, and preserved these words at great personal effort. The scrolls reflect devotion, fear, hope, and an intimate engagement with the divine. They are reminders that history is not only events and monuments, but also the thoughts, beliefs, and struggles of ordinary and extraordinary people seeking to make sense of their world. In that sense, the scrolls are more than documents. They are echoes of human consciousness reaching across time. Standing before them, one cannot help but be struck by the tension between preservation and loss. For every fragment recovered, countless others remain undiscovered, perhaps forever lost to the desert sands. And within each surviving piece, the margins and faded lines hold secrets yet to be fully understood. What thoughts did the original scribes hope to preserve? What warnings, guidance, or revelations were intended for those far in the future? And perhaps most provocatively, what messages still remain hidden in the shadows of these caves, waiting to reshape our understanding of the ancient world? As we leave the quiet, shadowed rooms of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the questions linger in the mind like echoes from the past. The scrolls connect us not only to a distant time, but to human curiosity itself, inviting us to contemplate the lengths to which people have gone to preserve knowledge, belief, and memory. They challenge our assumptions about what we know and remind us that even in the most thoroughly studied artifacts, some mysteries endure, waiting silently for discovery. The cliffs of Qumran rise sharply from the arid shores of the Dead Sea, their ochre and sandstone faces carved by millennia of wind and sun. Nestled among jagged outcrops and hidden caves, the ruins of an ancient settlement cling stubbornly to the rocky slopes. Here, in the quiet solitude of this remote wilderness, history whispers in fragments, half buried in dust and silence. And it was in these very caves, in the mid-20th century, that one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries of the modern era quietly emerged: the Dead Sea Scrolls. The initial find was almost accidental. A young Bedouin shepherd, chasing a stray goat, stumbled upon a hidden crevice, and within its shadowed depths lay jars of ancient parchment, wrapped with care yet fragile from centuries of neglect. These scrolls, dating from as early as the 3rd century BC to the 1st century AD, are a window into a world both familiar and alien. They contain texts that echo stories known from the Hebrew Bible, alongside writings entirely unfamiliar, offering insights into the beliefs, laws, and daily life of communities long vanished. But the deeper one examines them, the more questions arise. Why were these texts hidden in these caves, far from the centers of known civilization? Who decided which writings were sacred and which were discarded? As scholars began to examine the scrolls, a pattern emerged. The collection is vast, yet meticulously curated. There are fragments of nearly every book of the Hebrew Bible, yet also unique sectarian writings, hymns, and commentaries. Some scrolls are written in Hebrew, others in Aramaic, and a few in Greek, each carefully inscribed with ink that has survived the desert's harshness, defying the ravages of time. Paleographers have traced the scripts to various scribes, suggesting a community that placed extraordinary value on preserving knowledge. But there is more than historical record here. The texts carry a resonance, a sense that they were intended not merely to be read, but to be understood in layers, perhaps only by those initiated into their hidden meanings. Among the most tantalizing aspects of the scrolls are the cryptic references to cosmic battles, messianic figures, and apocalyptic visions. Some writings speak of a teacher of righteousness, a figure whose identity has eluded historians for decades. Was he a leader of a sect striving for spiritual purity, or a prophet whose significance extends beyond the dusty cliffs of Qumran? Scholars debate endlessly, piecing together context from fragmentary manuscripts, yet the figure remains shrouded in ambiguity. And then there are the enigmatic calendars and astrological charts, hinting at a sophisticated knowledge of time and the heavens, knowledge that some argue was symbolic, while others suggest it could have been practical, used to structure the rituals and rhythms of the community. The preservation of the scrolls themselves is equally mysterious. Centuries of fluctuating temperatures, humidity, and salt-laden winds could have destroyed most fragile materials, yet here they lie. Tattered, yes, but readable, enduring against odds. This durability, combined with the content's occasional obscurity, has fueled a quiet fascination beyond academia. Some researchers have speculated that the scrolls contain coded messages, hidden instructions, or secret interpretations of sacred texts, layers intentionally obscured from casual readers. Others suggest that their location, in the isolation of the Judean desert, was not only practical for preservation but symbolic, reflecting a community deliberately set apart from mainstream society, guarding truths too powerful or dangerous for the uninitiated. And there is the matter of omissions and contradictions. Certain biblical passages are rendered differently than in later canonical texts, suggesting alternative traditions and interpretations. Some fragments appear to describe events and figures never mentioned elsewhere, raising questions about what history has preserved and what it has lost. Were these differences accidental, the result of transmission errors over centuries? Or were they deliberate choices, reflecting a worldview in which multiple truths could coexist, and where the spiritual journey demanded discernment and contemplation? Yet, for all the careful scholarship and painstaking reconstruction, the scrolls retain an almost mystical quality. They are both familiar and alien, bridging worlds we recognize and worlds we can only imagine. Every fragment, every faded line of ink, seems to invite the question, what were these people trying to convey, and to whom? Were they chronicling their own lives, recording divine instruction, or leaving behind warnings meant for a distant future? And if messages were hidden intentionally, how much of what we read is the tip of an iceberg, with deeper secrets remaining buried in these desert caves or lost entirely to time? As one stands on the cliff edges overlooking the Dead Sea, imagining the scribes hunched over their parchment, the wind carrying whispers of millennia past, it is impossible not to feel a profound sense of reverence and mystery. The scrolls, in their fragile and enduring presence, challenge our assumptions about history, faith, and the human desire to preserve knowledge. They remind us that even in what seems like barren rock and sand, there are voices yearning to be heard, questions that defy easy answers, and truths that may be layered so deeply that only the patient and attentive can glimpse them. The caves of Qumran keep their secrets well. Some fragments have been translated, others pieced together. Yet the full story, if there is such a thing, remains elusive. Were the scrolls merely the writings of a secluded sect, or do they hint at broader currents of knowledge and belief lost to history? What might still be hidden in the depths of these caves, or in fragments yet undiscovered, waiting for someone to uncover a message that has lain silent for 2,000 years? The mystery persists, and in its quiet persistence lies the enduring power of the Dead Sea Scrolls, a testament to human curiosity, devotion, and the unknowable. From the hidden whispers of the Dead Sea Scrolls, we return now to the sun-scorched sands of ancient Egypt, where history preserves both grandeur and enigma. Among its many mysteries, few are as compelling as the disappearance of Pharaoh Akhenaten, the revolutionary ruler who sought to reshape religion, art, and power itself, only to vanish almost entirely from the historical record. His story begins in the city he built, Akhenaten, known today as Amarna, a gleaming, planned metropolis rising along the Nile's eastern bank, filled with temples, palaces, and workshops, designed to honor the god Aten, the sun disk. Walking through the ruins of Akhenaten, one can almost sense the echo of life. Streets carefully laid out, colonnades reaching toward the sky, residences carved with extraordinary attention to proportion and light. Reliefs on stone walls depict Akhenaten and his family in intimate domestic scenes. Him, unusually slender, elongated features accentuated, playing with his daughters, offering prayers to the Aten. The art itself was revolutionary, breaking with centuries of Egyptian convention, suggesting a pharaoh who sought to reshape not only faith, but the very way humans represented themselves. Yet as vivid as these images are, they offer only fragments of the man himself. Beyond his city and his distinctive depictions, Akhenaten's fate is a shadow, a question mark that has haunted Egyptology for centuries. Akhenaten ruled during the 14th century BC, during the 18th dynasty, a time of relative stability and international influence for Egypt. Yet his reign is marked by upheaval, religious, political, and cultural. By elevating Aten above all other gods, he disrupted the entrenched priesthoods of Amun and other deities, creating friction that historians suspect may have contributed to his disappearance from records. After his death, or possible removal from power, successive rulers worked to erase his legacy. Temples were defaced, names chiseled from monuments, and images destroyed. This deliberate erasure has only deepened the mystery, raising questions about how and why a ruler who wielded such authority could be so thoroughly effaced. Mainstream theories suggest several possibilities. Some argue that Akhenaten died naturally, and that the subsequent rulers, including Tutankhamun, moved quickly to restore traditional religious practices, erasing evidence of his reforms. Others posit that he was deposed, perhaps even assassinated, by factions loyal to the old religious order. The exact location of his tomb remains uncertain. While some propose that he was interred in a small, unfinished tomb in Amarna, others suggest he may have been buried in the Valley of the Kings under a different identity, his body hidden or misidentified to prevent desecration. Yet, even with these mainstream explanations, anomalies persist. Skeletal remains found in Amarna, attributed tentatively to Akhenaten or members of his family, yield inconclusive results. DNA testing, facial reconstruction, and forensic study have provided clues but no certainty. The physical evidence hints at illness, malformation, or genetic conditions. Yet these observations cannot explain why his memory was so aggressively obliterated. Did he fall victim to disease? Or was his erasure a political act so complete that even centuries of archaeological work cannot fully recover it? Speculative theories deepen the intrigue. Some researchers suggest that Akhenaten may have fled his city in fear of revolt or assassination, taking his family into exile. Others propose that his religious revolution was more radical than currently understood, perhaps involving secret knowledge or practices that were deliberately hidden, leaving little trace for posterity. Fringe ideas even suggest that his unusual appearance in reliefs, elongated skull, slender frame, exaggerated features, reflects hidden esoteric symbolism or medical conditions that were misinterpreted by contemporaries, adding layers to the story of his disappearance. Each hypothesis illuminates a different facet of the mystery, but none provide definitive answers, leaving Akhenaten suspended between history and speculation. The psychological and cultural impact of his disappearance is as compelling as the physical evidence. A ruler who sought to transform society so completely that he dared to defy millennia of tradition inevitably left ripples far beyond his reign. Art, architecture, and literature were altered, suppressed, or redirected in response to his reforms. The erasure of his name and memory created a vacuum in historical narrative, prompting later generations to reconstruct Egypt's past around the absence of a man who once sought to dominate both faith and iconography. How does a civilization reconcile the memory of a leader whose legacy has been systematically expunged, yet whose influence lingers in subtler, almost imperceptible ways? Walking through the remnants of Akhenaten today, the mystery of Akhenaten feels almost tangible. The sun-drenched streets, the skeletal remains of temples, the fragments of inscriptions, all speak to a pharaoh who lived boldly, challenged convention, and then vanished into history's shadows. The city he built, once vibrant and filled with devotion to Aten, now echoes with silence, a testimony to both human ambition and the fragility of memory. Visitors can almost imagine the tension of that era, devotion and rebellion, faith and fear, creation and destruction, all intersecting in the life and disappearance of a single man. Akhenaten's story challenges our understanding of power, faith, and historical preservation. He is a reminder that history is rarely complete, and that even monumental figures, carefully documented and immortalized in stone and papyrus, can vanish from the record when society deems it necessary. The questions surrounding his disappearance remain unresolved. Did he die quietly in Amarna, or was he removed by unseen hands? Was his erasure a calculated act of political necessity, or the natural consequence of religious upheaval? And what other secrets might still be hidden beneath the sands, in tombs unexcavated, in artifacts misidentified, waiting for discovery by future generations? From the sun-drenched streets of Akhenaten and the vanished figure of Akhenaten, we turn now to a place where the elements themselves seem to guard the secrets of a forgotten tragedy. High in the Garhwal Himalayas, at an elevation of over 5,000 meters, lies Lake Roopkund, a small glacial pond, often hidden beneath snow, its waters deceptively serene. Yet beneath its icy surface and scattered along its shores, hundreds of human skeletons lie in silent testimony to a catastrophic event that occurred centuries ago. They are not carefully arranged tombs or ceremonial burials, but remains that suggest sudden, violent death. The lake, known locally as the Skeleton Lake, challenges our understanding of human endurance, fate, and the mysteries of life in extreme environments. The first skeletal discoveries date back to the 1940s, when hikers stumbled across the scattered bones. Scientific investigations later confirmed that the remains belonged to multiple groups of people who had perished abruptly, their bodies exposed to the harsh mountain climate. Carbon dating places these deaths around the 9th to 10th centuries AD, though some skeletons are even older, suggesting that the lake may have been the site of repeated tragedy over time. The sheer number of individuals, combined with the evidence of violent trauma, raises immediate questions. What brought these people to this remote altitude, and why did so many meet their end here in such a devastating manner? Close examination of the bones provides tantalizing, if incomplete, answers. Many skulls show signs of blunt force trauma, fractures consistent with sudden impacts rather than long-term decay or post-mortem damage. Limbs are often broken, sometimes in patterns that suggest a single, catastrophic event, perhaps a sudden storm, an avalanche, or a hail of falling stones. Yet the variation in age, sex, and apparent health of the individuals complicates the picture. They were not a single family or military unit, but a diverse group, some possibly travelers, others pilgrims, and still others whose identities remain a mystery. How, in an era of limited survival equipment, did these people even reach such a forbidding environment? Mainstream theories attempt to reconcile the evidence with natural hazards. The region is known for violent storms, extreme snowfall, and sudden hailstorms, conditions that can quickly overwhelm unprepared travelers. Some researchers argue that the lake's victims were pilgrims or traders caught in a freak storm, with the blunt force injuries caused by falling ice or rock. Others propose a series of misadventures where multiple groups over time succumbed to the mountain's dangers, leaving a cumulative record of human misfortune. Yet, while plausible, these explanations do not fully account for certain anomalies, patterns of injury that appear too precise, clusters of individuals in close proximity, and occasional evidence of deliberate positioning of some bones, as though rituals were involved. This has led some scholars and observers to consider alternative, more enigmatic possibilities. Could Lake Roopkund have been the site of ancient ritual sacrifices, intended to appease mountain deities or ensure safe passage through treacherous terrain? The Himalayas have long been associated with spiritual practice, pilgrimage, and mystical beliefs, and the notion of ritualized offerings to the gods is consistent with broader regional traditions. Could the skeletal remains be a record of devotion or of punishment, ceremonial or otherwise, recorded in the harshest of landscapes? Further complexity emerges when considering genetic studies and isotope analysis. Recent investigations suggest that some of the individuals originated from distant regions of South Asia, while others may have traveled from as far afield as the eastern Mediterranean. This diversity raises even more questions. Why would people from such disparate locations converge at this remote lake? Was it part of an established pilgrimage route, a trade path, or something else entirely? Perhaps a spiritual gathering now lost to history? And if the deaths were the result of natural hazards, why did they strike so suddenly, leaving so little trace of survival or escape? Fringe hypotheses abound, from the poetic to the speculative. Some have suggested ancient tribal conflict, secret expeditions, or even encounters with unknown phenomena in the high mountains. Others consider that the extreme environmental conditions, combined with ritualized behaviors, fasting, exposure, or ceremonial trials, may have contributed to mass mortality in ways modern observers cannot fully comprehend. Each theory, while unproven, reflects the enduring fascination that arises when human tragedy intersects with the unknowable forces of nature and culture. Walking along the shores of Lake Roopkund today, the silence is profound. The water glimmers like glass in the sunlight, betraying nothing of the horror beneath or the stories embedded in each skeletal fragment. The human imprint on this landscape is both intimate and distant, a reminder of mortality in an unforgiving world. Visitors often describe an eerie sense of presence, as though the mountains themselves remember the lives that ended here, and perhaps still carry warnings to the living. The combination of isolation, extreme altitude, and human vulnerability creates a palpable tension, a quiet contemplation of how fragile life can be, and how quickly the narrative of human existence can vanish into the elements. The story of Lake Roopkund challenges us to consider the boundaries between accident, violence, and ritual. Were these deaths a cruel twist of fate, an act of nature, or an intentional human practice lost to time? And what other sites, equally remote and inaccessible, might conceal similar mysteries, waiting silently under ice, rock, or soil? Even centuries later, the lake's secrets remain partially hidden, preserved in bone, stone, and memory, reminding us that prehistoric and medieval histories are rarely neat or fully comprehensible. In the shadow of the Himalayas, the skeletons of Lake Roopkund endure as silent witnesses. They prompt reflection not only on the lives of those who perished, but on the fragile line between survival and catastrophe, between the known and the unknowable. And as we leave the lake behind, the questions remain. What drove these people to such heights? How did they die with such sudden, violent force? And what lessons or warnings still lie concealed, waiting for future explorers to uncover their secrets? From the remote heights of Lake Roopkund, where silence and snow preserve the memory of sudden death, we descend now into the stone corridors of London to a tale that intertwines power, ambition, and unresolved disappearance. The story of the princes in the tower has haunted England for over 5 centuries, a mystery of politics and human intrigue whose echoes linger in the very walls of the Tower of London. Here, within these ancient fortifications, 2 young boys, Edward V and his brother Richard of Shrewsbury, vanished in the shadow of the crown, leaving a question that has never been fully answered. What truly became of them? The Tower of London, a fortress of stone and history along the banks of the Thames, exudes an atmosphere both imposing and intimate. Within its walls, narrow staircases wind past dark chambers, hidden recesses, and ancient rooms that have witnessed coronations, imprisonments, and executions. It is a place where every stone seems to remember acts of power and betrayal. In one of these rooms, the 2 princes were last seen in the summer of 1483, confined by order of their uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who had assumed the throne as Richard III. The circumstances surrounding their confinement are well documented, yet their fate remains profoundly mysterious, leaving historians, authors, and the public grappling with what may have happened behind these walls. Edward V, only 13 years old, was poised to ascend the throne upon the death of his father, Edward IV. His brother Richard was only 10. The boys' youth made them vulnerable not only to the machinations of ambitious relatives, but also to the shifting loyalties of the court, where alliances and rivalries could change overnight. When their father died, the boys were placed under the protection of their uncle Richard, a man both powerful and politically savvy. But within weeks, Richard declared Edward's birth illegitimate and assumed kingship himself. The princes were moved into the tower, ostensibly for their safety. But after that moment, historical records grow frustratingly silent. Archaeological and textual evidence confirms that the boys were never seen publicly again. The chambers in which they were held have been examined extensively, yet no definitive physical traces remain, leaving only circumstantial clues. Chroniclers of the period hint at ominous possibilities, yet these accounts are colored by political allegiances, bias, and the passage of time. Some describe the boys' removal as a prelude to murder. Others suggest a more sinister neglect that allowed disease or malnutrition to claim their lives. The truth, if it ever existed in full, has been obscured by centuries of secrecy, destruction of records, and conflicting narratives. Mainstream historians propose several plausible scenarios. The most widely accepted theory holds that the boys were murdered, likely within the tower itself, either on Richard III's orders or by agents acting on his behalf. Political necessity, consolidation of power, and elimination of rivals are offered as motivations, grounded in the brutal realities of 15th-century monarchy. Archaeological digs near the tower's chapel of St. John have occasionally uncovered human remains, some attributed speculatively to the princes, yet identification is impossible, leaving the theory largely circumstantial. Another theory suggests the boys may have survived temporarily, hidden or spirited away by loyal supporters. Chroniclers like Dominic Mancini hint at the possibility that they were removed from the tower under secrecy, perhaps to protect them from the lethal ambitions of adults surrounding them. Could Edward and Richard have lived, at least for a time, in obscurity, their identities concealed to shield them from the deadly intrigues of court? If so, where did they go? And why has no trace ever been recovered to support this notion? Speculative and fringe interpretations add further layers to the mystery. Some propose that the princes were victims of a political conspiracy involving other members of the Yorkist faction, or even agents acting independently to reshape the line of succession. Others suggest that their deaths were ritualized or symbolic acts intended to send a message to the nobility and populace alike, that the crown demanded obedience and would remove any obstacles, regardless of age or innocence. These theories cannot be confirmed, yet the tower itself, with its hidden rooms and shadowed corners, lends a tangible weight to the speculation, as though the stones themselves hold the memory of betrayal. The human dimension of the mystery is particularly striking. These were children, caught in the cross-currents of power far beyond their capacity to navigate. Their disappearance is more than a political event. It is a tragedy of innocence, magnified by the elaborate machinations of adults. Every detail we know, their confinement, the movements within the tower, the eventual disappearance, evokes questions of morality, duty, and the limits of historical record. How does history preserve justice when the victims cannot speak? How do we reconstruct truth when every contemporary source is itself shaped by fear, ambition, or allegiance? The cultural and literary impact of the prince's disappearance has been profound. Over the centuries, writers, artists, and historians have revisited their story, portraying it in chronicles, plays, and novels, each interpretation adding to the mystique while revealing as much about society's fascination with royal tragedy as it does about the historical events themselves. The tower remains a potent symbol, both as a fortress of state power and as a repository of unsolved enigmas. Visitors often describe an almost palpable tension within its walls, a sense of lives abruptly and inexplicably extinguished, lingering across generations. Modern investigations have attempted to shed further light. In 1674, 2 small skeletons were discovered beneath a staircase in the White Tower and interred in Westminster Abbey, assumed by some to be those of the missing princes. Subsequent scientific examinations have yielded inconclusive results. DNA analysis has been suggested but remains limited by contamination and lack of definitive comparative material. Each attempt to unlock the mystery, each forensic or historical investigation, produces more questions than answers, revealing the limits of knowledge, even in an age of advanced technology. The disappearance of the princes in the tower invites reflection not only on a specific historical event, but on the fragile intersection of power, memory, and mortality. It reminds us that even in well-documented societies, profound mysteries can persist, unresolved across centuries. Were the boys murdered, exiled, or hidden by forces unknown? And if they survived, why did their existence vanish entirely from subsequent accounts? The tower holds no answers beyond what the stones themselves whisper, and yet those whispers are enough to keep historians, archaeologists, and the curious enthralled. As we walk away from the Tower of London, the shadow of Edward V and Richard of Shrewsbury lingers. The mystery of their fate is a reminder that history is often a mosaic of fragments, silences, and human intentions, some deliberate, some lost to time. The prince's story challenges us to question what we know, what we assume, and what may remain forever beyond our reach. And as we leave these ancient walls behind, one question persists, quietly and insistently. What truths are still hidden within the tower, waiting for the day someone might finally uncover them? From the shadowed halls of the Tower of London, where whispers of lost princes linger through centuries, we turn now to a city hidden not in stone corridors but among the clouds, perched high on the jagged ridges of the Andes. Machu Picchu, the Inca's fabled lost city, rises from verdant slopes and mist-shrouded peaks, its terraces, temples, and plazas meticulously carved into the mountainside. Even today, its very presence evokes wonder, a civilization's ingenuity frozen in time, cloaked in mystery, and largely inaccessible for centuries. The city seems to defy gravity, a fusion of human vision and natural grandeur, leaving all who behold it with questions. Why was it built here? And for whom? Approaching Machu Picchu, the scale and precision of its construction becomes immediately apparent. Thousands of granite blocks, some weighing several tons, fit together with such meticulous care that not a single chisel mark or joint is visible. Terraces cascade down the mountains, seemingly sculpted to prevent erosion while simultaneously supporting agriculture for its inhabitants. The Sun Temple catches the first rays of dawn, aligning with the solstice in ways that suggest sophisticated astronomical knowledge. Every stone, every angle appears intentional, yet the overarching purpose of the city remains elusive. Was it a royal retreat, a ceremonial center, a fortress, or all of these at once? The history of Machu Picchu is equally enigmatic. Built in the 15th century under the reign of the Inca emperor Pachacuti, the city remained largely unknown to the outside world until Hiram Bingham's rediscovery in 1911. Despite the attention of archaeologists and historians, much about its origin, function, and sudden abandonment remains uncertain. Written records from the Incas are scarce, leaving modern researchers to rely on oral traditions, architectural evidence, and analysis of artifacts to reconstruct its story. Even these clues raise further questions, for Machu Picchu's scale and sophistication suggest a population with knowledge, organization, and resources that surpass what contemporary accounts describe. Mainstream explanations portray Machu Picchu as a royal estate or religious retreat. Some scholars point to its proximity to sacred mountains, Apus, as evidence that the Incas built it as a spiritual hub, a place to commune with the gods and perform important rituals. Others emphasize its agricultural terraces and water management systems, suggesting it was designed to sustain a permanent population, perhaps numbering in the hundreds or even thousands. Yet, despite these insights, large areas of the city remain unexplored or only partially understood, and the abrupt nature of its abandonment adds to the enigma. Why was such an intricate and carefully maintained city suddenly left to the clouds, hidden from all except local communities? The geography itself adds layers of mystery. Machu Picchu is not merely elevated but strategically perched between ridges and flanked by the Urubamba River below. Its location provides both natural protection and breathtaking vistas, yet it would have been difficult to access, especially for the large-scale transportation of stone and supplies. How did the Incas move such massive blocks across steep slopes and construct the terraces with such precision? Modern engineers marvel at the techniques, many of which seem to anticipate knowledge that would not be formally documented until centuries later. The interplay between natural and human-made structures creates the sense that Machu Picchu was conceived as a dialogue with the landscape itself, a living testament to a society attuned to both aesthetics and utility. Artifacts and skeletal remains within the city hint at the daily lives of its inhabitants. Pottery, tools, and ceremonial objects reveal a sophisticated culture deeply intertwined with religion, agriculture, and governance. Yet these tangible traces raise further questions. Why were certain artifacts deliberately hidden or stored in places that seem ritualistic rather than practical? Could Machu Picchu have served as a repository of esoteric knowledge accessible only to select individuals? Some speculate that the Incas used it as a center for astronomical observation, mathematical calculation, or spiritual instruction, an elite enclave removed from the political center at Cusco. Each artifact, each structure seems to whisper secrets that refuse to be fully interpreted. Speculative interpretations abound, fueled by the city's dramatic location and partial isolation. Fringe theories suggest Machu Picchu may have been a ceremonial site connected to myths of the Inca origin, or even a place of refuge for knowledge deemed too dangerous or sacred for broader dissemination. Others propose that the city's abandonment was not sudden but planned, perhaps as part of a ritual cycle or response to political upheaval elsewhere in the Inca Empire. Some scholars note the precise alignment of temples with solstices and equinoxes, speculating that the city encoded astronomical or calendrical knowledge, a cosmic map written in stone and earth. None of these theories can be definitively proven, yet they persist because Machu Picchu itself invites wonder and questioning. The human element is essential to understanding the mystery. The Incas who built and inhabited the city possessed remarkable organizational skill, social cohesion, and reverence for their environment. Yet they remain largely anonymous, their names and lives lost to history. Unlike written records in other cultures, the Incas relied on quipus, knotted strings for record-keeping, which have yet to be fully deciphered. What knowledge, beliefs, or rituals did these people safeguard within the terraces, temples, and stone walls? And when the city was abandoned, what prompted them to leave such a carefully crafted world behind, intact yet silent? Standing today on the Sun Gate or among the terraces, one feels a profound connection to both human ingenuity and the unknown. Mist drifts across the valleys, obscuring and revealing the city in an almost ritualistic dance, as if nature itself guards the secrets of Machu Picchu. The structures endure as a testament to ingenuity, resilience, and perhaps the deliberate concealment of knowledge. Even centuries after its abandonment, the city continues to defy complete understanding, challenging assumptions about ancient engineering, religious practice, and social organization. Machu Picchu forces us to confront the limits of historical knowledge. Was it a royal retreat, a religious sanctuary, or a repository of lost wisdom? Why was it built so far from other major settlements, and why was it abandoned with such care that centuries passed before the outside world even learned of its existence? The city is both tangible and elusive, its stones permanent, yet its purpose partially obscured, an invitation to wonder, to study, and to speculate. And so, as the morning mist rises over the Andean peaks and sunlight illuminates the terraces, we are left with questions that endure. What stories remain encoded in the stones, waiting for those who might read them? What knowledge, practice, or belief was preserved within these clouds, hidden from the world? And what might still be discovered in Machu Picchu, the Inca's city in the clouds, whose mysteries continue to inspire awe and inquiry even centuries after its creators vanished into history? From the cloud-kissed terraces of Machu Picchu, where the Andes guard secrets of human ingenuity and vanished civilizations, we now journey to the sprawling plains of South Asia, to a civilization that thrived long before most written records existed. The Indus Valley Civilization. At its heart lies one of history's most enduring enigmas, the Harappan script, a collection of symbols etched on seals, pottery, and tablets, whose meaning has eluded scholars for over a century. Though we can trace the grandeur of this civilization through its cities, trade networks, and sophisticated urban planning, the language it used to communicate remains a puzzle, a whisper from the past we have yet to decipher. Walking through the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, one is immediately struck by the precision and order of these ancient cities. Streets were laid out in grids, with drainage systems that rival modern engineering. Brick houses, granaries, and marketplaces suggest a society both complex and highly organized. Yet among these tangible remnants of daily life, the inscriptions left behind offer only glimpses of the intangible, thoughts, records, and possibly beliefs locked in a system of signs we cannot read. Hundreds of short sequences of symbols, lines, pictographs, and abstract motifs appear on small steatite seals, pottery fragments, and clay tablets. Each one hints at a language, a code, or a system of administration, yet their true significance remains frustratingly out of reach. Discovered during excavations in the 1920s and 1930s, the Harappan script immediately captured the imagination of archaeologists and linguists. Unlike other ancient writing systems, such as Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, it shows no obvious connection to later scripts. The symbols are compact, often appearing in sequences of 4 to 6 characters, with rare instances of longer inscriptions. Despite decades of study, attempts to assign phonetic or linguistic value to the symbols have produced tantalizing hypotheses, but no definitive translation. Could this be an administrative shorthand, a ritual language, or a fully developed writing system whose logic we have not yet comprehended? Mainstream scholarship has approached the script cautiously, noting that the brevity of surviving texts and the lack of bilingual inscriptions, like a Harappan Rosetta Stone, makes decipherment exceedingly difficult. Some researchers argue that the symbols represent economic transactions or property marks, used by merchants and artisans to track goods, ownership, or trade. Others suggest that the inscriptions may encode personal names, clan identifiers, or titles of office. In every case, the brevity of the sequences leaves the wider context invisible, forcing scholars to extrapolate meaning from probability and comparison rather than direct evidence. Yet even within these mainstream explanations, anomalies remain. Some seals appear to contain sequences arranged in highly deliberate patterns, suggesting rules of syntax or grammar. Others include pictorial elements, animals, humans, or abstract motifs, whose purpose may be symbolic, religious, or ideological rather than practical. Why would a script designed for record-keeping include seemingly decorative or ceremonial components? Could these signs reflect a dual function, both practical and spiritual, bridging commerce, law, and ritual in ways that modern observers struggle to understand? Speculative theories have emerged, fueled by the script's unresolved status. Some suggest that the Harappans possessed a form of proto-literacy far ahead of contemporary societies, encoding knowledge of astronomy, cosmology, or sacred rituals into compact symbols. Others propose that the script may have been intentionally obscured over time, surviving only in fragments that preserve hints of a language once rich with meaning. A more fringe notion posits that the Harappan script represents a lost intellectual tradition, one that may have influenced later writing systems indirectly, yet without leaving a readable legacy. While tantalizing, none of these hypotheses can be verified, leaving the symbols as silent witnesses to a culture whose inner life remains partially veiled. Archaeologists also debate the relationship between the script and the decline of the Indus Valley civilization. As cities were abandoned around 1900 BC, inscriptions became scarcer, raising questions about literacy and cultural continuity. Did the ability to write vanish along with centralized urban authority? Were records deliberately destroyed, lost, or simply neglected as populations migrated or faced environmental challenges? And if so, what knowledge, history, or governance structures were lost along with the script? Every question highlights both the sophistication of the Harappans and the fragility of human memory preserved in symbols on stone or clay. The human aspect of the mystery is equally compelling. Each seal or tablet represents an individual act of inscription, a decision to encode meaning, to communicate across time and space. The Harappan scribe, whether merchant, priest, or official, invested thought, skill, and purpose into these marks. And yet, while their hands left traces for us to see, the voices behind them remain silent, a bridge to the past that we cannot yet cross. How did these individuals view their world? What did the symbols mean to them in daily life, in ceremony, or in trade? And when the cities fell into decline, how much of that knowledge faded with them, leaving only cryptic traces in the earth? The mystery of the Harappan script also forces us to confront the limitations of modern analysis. Despite advances in computing, linguistics, and statistical modeling, no definitive breakthrough has yet revealed the system's structure or meaning. Could we be missing a crucial element, cultural context, a parallel script, or even an overlooked artifact that would unlock understanding? And if the script is never deciphered, what does that say about our ability to reconstruct fully the lives and thoughts of civilizations that left no oral or textual successors? As we move among the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro or Harappa, examining small seals or fragments of pottery, the sense of mystery is almost tactile. The script is both present and absent, tangible in its physical form, but invisible in its meaning. It invites reflection on what it means to be literate, to record, and to preserve human thought. It also reminds us that civilizations are more than monuments or cities. They are voices, sometimes lost, sometimes echoing faintly through symbols we cannot yet interpret. The Harappan script endures as a silent, unresolved testament to human ingenuity, organization, and communication. Each line, curve, and pictograph represents a civilization that thrived thousands of years ago, leaving behind a world we can reconstruct only partially. And so, as we leave the dusty streets of Harappa behind, one question remains. What knowledge, stories, or wisdom are still hidden in those undeciphered symbols? And what might we learn if we could finally hear the voices of the Harappans speaking across millennia through the script they left behind, still waiting for discovery? From the undeciphered symbols of the Harappan civilization, where messages etched in clay and stone have resisted our understanding for millennia, we shift now to a mystery much closer in time, yet no less enigmatic. On a quiet stretch of Florida's coastline stands the Coral Castle, a sprawling assemblage of megalithic stones, monolithic gates, and meticulously carved structures, all the work, so it is said, of a single man. The castle's pale limestone blocks rise from the earth with astonishing precision, arranged in ways that defy easy explanation, prompting the question that has fascinated visitors for generations. How could one man, armed with nothing more than ingenuity and sheer determination, create such a monument? As you approach the Coral Castle today, the scale and intricacy of the site immediately impress. Massive stones, some weighing several tons, are shaped with smooth surfaces, sharp angles, and interlocking joints. Towers, walls, and tables appear carefully positioned, with certain structures oriented toward celestial events like solstices and equinoxes. A massive stone gate, perfectly balanced on a single pivot, swings with the lightest touch, inviting speculation about forces and techniques long since forgotten. The environment itself seems to amplify the mystery. The Florida sky overhead, the gentle rustle of wind through the surrounding trees, and the quiet hum of distant traffic contrast sharply with the otherworldly precision of the stones. The story of Coral Castle begins with Edward Leedskalnin, a Latvian immigrant who arrived in the United States in the early 20th century. Known for his small stature, he was just over 5 feet tall. Leedskalnin began work on the site in secrecy, often laboring alone under the cover of night. He claimed to possess knowledge of the secrets of the pyramids, alluding to techniques that would allow him to move and carve enormous blocks single-handedly. By the time of his death in 1951, the castle had grown into a complex of more than 1,100 tons of stone, crafted with meticulous attention to form, balance, and alignment. How could one man, without modern machinery, achieve such feats? Mainstream explanations suggest that Leedskalnin relied on simple tools, pulleys, levers, and ingenuity to manipulate the massive blocks. Accounts from those who observed him at work hint at clever applications of basic mechanical principles, perhaps combined with trial and error developed over decades. Yet these explanations, while plausible, often fail to satisfy the imagination. How could a single individual, often working at night, move stones weighing multiple tons with such apparent ease? How did he achieve the delicate balance of the gates and the precision of the carvings without assistance or documentation? The questions themselves seem to hover, suspended above the limestone like the stones themselves. Speculative theories abound, fueled by both Leedskalnin's own cryptic statements and the seemingly impossible nature of the construction. Some suggest that he had rediscovered forgotten knowledge of magnetism or leverage, a secret once known to the builders of ancient megaliths. Others venture further, proposing that Leedskalnin had uncovered esoteric or scientific truths lost to modern understanding, allowing him to defy conventional expectations of physics. Fringe interpretations even hint at the use of anti-gravity principles or invisible forces, though such ideas remain beyond verification. The castle's reality, however, does not require mystical explanation to evoke awe. It is enough to marvel at the human capacity for ingenuity, persistence, and vision. Equally fascinating is Leedskalnin's motivation. He claimed that he built the coral castle for a woman who had rejected him, describing the work as a monument to lost love. Every stone, every carving was imbued with personal significance, turning labor into legacy, grief into art. Yet the scale of the project, spanning decades of solitary effort, hints at something beyond mere romantic gesture. Was the castle a laboratory of experimentation, a private sanctuary, or a personal codex encoding knowledge that Leedskalnin intended to preserve? The ambiguity of intent deepens the mystery, merging human emotion with mechanical wonder. The coral castle also invites reflection on the relationship between human ambition and the natural world. The limestone itself is a living material, quarried and shaped with care. Water and weather have sculpted it further, subtly altering the forms over time. Leedskalnin worked within these constraints, respecting the properties of stone while pushing the boundaries of what seemed physically possible. His interaction with material, space, and gravity blurs the line between art, engineering, and enigma. The result is a site that feels alive, as though the stones themselves hold knowledge, responding to touch and gaze in ways both tangible and elusive. Visitors to Coral Castle are often struck by the quiet sense of wonder that pervades the site. Gates swing effortlessly, carved furniture balances perfectly, and stone walls rise with a precision that challenges expectations. One can imagine Leedskalnin moving stones in the moonlight, guided by intuition, observation, and relentless patience. The experience of standing among the structures evokes questions about knowledge, creativity, and the limits of human capability. How much of what he achieved can be explained by ingenuity alone, and how much remains tantalizingly beyond our grasp? The enduring mystery of Coral Castle parallels larger questions about the nature of lost knowledge and human perseverance. Across history, solitary individuals and societies have created feats that defy contemporary understanding. Pyramids, megaliths, ancient cities, works that compel modern observers to question assumptions about technology, labor, and human potential. Coral Castle stands as a modern echo of these ancient enigmas, a testament to the possibility that much of human capability remains hidden, waiting for those who are willing to look, experiment, and imagine. Even decades after Leedskalnin's death, the castle continues to provoke fascination and inquiry. Scholars, engineers, and curious travelers all confront the same questions. How was it built, and why? What knowledge, lost or never shared, allowed a single man to move hundreds of tons of stone with apparent ease? And perhaps most poignantly, What does the coral castle reveal about the intersection of obsession, creativity, and human endurance? The way a single individual can leave a mark that transcends ordinary comprehension. As sunlight falls across the coral blocks, casting long shadows and illuminating carved glyphs, the castle seems to hold its secret silently, neither confirming nor denying speculation. The combination of personal story, extraordinary construction, and enduring mystery ensures that Coral Castle continues to captivate those who encounter it. Like other enigmas we have explored, from Harappan symbols to Machu Picchu, it asks us to consider not only what was achieved, but also what may still be hidden in plain sight, waiting for discovery. And so, as we leave the quiet Florida site behind, one question remains. What truths, techniques, or insights did Edward Leeds Skalnin possess that the rest of the world cannot yet comprehend? What lessons lie encoded in the balance of stone, the alignment of gates, and the labor of a solitary life? The Coral Castle, like so many enigmas before it, reminds us that human creativity often surpasses expectation, leaving traces that invite wonder, reflection, and the enduring thrill of mystery. From the silent, monolithic stones of Florida's Coral Castle, built in mystery and solitude, we now journey across centuries and oceans to the windswept shores of North America, where a different kind of enigma lingers, not in stone or script, but in absence. On Roanoke Island, off the coast of present-day North Carolina, the first English colony in the New World vanished without a trace in the late 16th century, leaving behind only tantalizing clues and a name that echoes through history: the Lost Colony. Unlike monuments or inscriptions, the mystery here is human, haunting in its intimacy and profoundly unsettling. How could an entire settlement, men, women, and children, disappear so completely, leaving nothing but a carved word on a tree and the whisper of the sea? The setting itself shapes the story. Roanoke Island, a slender spit of land bordered by tidal rivers, marshes, and dense forest, is at once beautiful and forbidding. Winds sweep across the shore, carrying the scent of salt and brine, while the water rises and falls with a rhythm that has persisted for centuries. Early colonists would have encountered a landscape both fertile and treacherous, capable of sustaining life but fraught with disease, unpredictable weather, and complex relations with the indigenous populations of the region. It is in this liminal space, between land and sea, civilization and wilderness, that the first Roanoke settlers attempted to carve out a new life, and in which they ultimately vanished. Historical records provide a framework, but few answers. In 1587, approximately 115 settlers, including women and children, arrived on Roanoke Island under the leadership of John White. Within months, the colony faced severe challenges: food shortages, strained relations with neighboring tribes, and the isolation of the island from England, a perilous transatlantic distance that made regular resupply impossible. White returned to England later that year to secure additional provisions, intending to return within months. But the English fleet was delayed by war and other obligations, and when White finally returned in 1590, the colony had disappeared entirely. Buildings were dismantled, possessions vanished, and the only clue was the word Croatoan carved into a post, with no cross or sign to indicate danger. Mainstream theories attempt to explain the disappearance through a combination of environmental pressures and human choices. Some historians suggest that the colonists may have relocated to Croatoan Island, a nearby settlement of friendly indigenous people, integrating with local tribes for survival. Others posit that disease, famine, or conflict with neighboring communities could have decimated the population, leaving few or no survivors to record their fate. Archaeological evidence has offered tantalizing hints. Artifacts found inland, traces of early European-style dwellings, but no definitive proof of the colonists' ultimate fate. The scarcity of records transforms the event from history into legend, amplifying the mystery with each passing generation. Speculative interpretations deepen the enigma. Some suggest that the colonists attempted a perilous journey inland, following rivers and trails in search of resources or safety, only to succumb to natural hazards or hostile encounters. Others propose more extraordinary scenarios: hidden caches of survivors, clandestine relocations orchestrated with local tribes, or even secret networks of European settlers seeking to evade Spanish or other colonial powers. Fringe theories extend into the realm of the improbable, imagining mysterious forces, supernatural intervention, or alien involvement. But the enduring fascination lies not in sensationalism, but in the profound absence of closure. The human dimension of the lost colony is especially compelling. Children, women, and men, people who had crossed the Atlantic, leaving behind homes, families, and familiar landscapes, vanished, leaving behind nothing but questions. What thoughts and fears haunted them in their final days? How did they respond to the pressures of survival, isolation, and uncertainty? The only message left, Croatoan, is a silent testament, a word carved in hope, warning, or direction, yet opaque to those who later sought its meaning. The silence of Roanoke speaks as loudly as any written record, a human absence that echoes through centuries. Archaeological and scientific investigations have attempted to illuminate the mystery. Excavations on Roanoke and surrounding islands have uncovered European artifacts, foundations of temporary shelters, and remnants of trade with local tribes. While these discoveries hint at movement or integration, they fail to provide definitive evidence of the colony's fate. Forensic analysis of skeletal remains in the region has yet to produce conclusive connections to the lost colony, and any potential documentation or correspondence that might clarify events has been lost to time. Each piece of evidence both illuminates and deepens the mystery, suggesting possible scenarios while leaving the ultimate answer just beyond reach. The geography and climate of Roanoke contribute further to speculation. Hurricanes, tidal flooding, and dense forest could have forced the settlers to disperse, relocate, or perish. The island's proximity to other settlements, both indigenous and European, offers potential avenues for integration or conflict, but the lack of definitive records ensures that these possibilities remain conjectural. Even the word Croatoan raises questions. Did it indicate a tribe, a place, or a final plan? Was it a sign left in desperation, a navigational clue, or an attempt at communication across time and space? The lost colony resonates because it is more than an unsolved historical event. It is a meditation on human vulnerability, isolation, and the fragility of civilization. Entire communities, full of hopes, fears, and everyday lives, vanished into the landscape, leaving only whispers in wood and soil. It challenges assumptions about colonization, survival, and human resilience, reminding us that even in an age of navigation, settlement, and expansion, the natural world and circumstance can overwhelm human intention. Visitors to Roanoke Island today encounter a place of quiet beauty and subtle tension. The forested paths, tidal estuaries, and wind-swept fields suggest both possibility and peril. Walking among these landscapes, one can almost imagine the colonists moving through the undergrowth, carrying supplies, tending children, seeking shelter, or leaving messages in hope that someone, someday, would understand. The landscape itself becomes a participant in the story, preserving and erasing history in equal measure. The mystery of Roanoke invites reflection on memory, documentation, and human ambition. Unlike monumental structures or preserved artifacts, the colony's story is marked by absence, by gaps in the historical record, by what is not known. It forces us to confront the limitations of evidence, the fragility of human plans, and the profound weight of questions that endure across generations. How much did the colonists understand about the risks they faced? How did they attempt to communicate their fate? And what truths might still lie buried beneath the soil, waiting for archaeologists, historians, or chance to uncover them? In the quiet hush of the Carolina coast, the lost colony of Roanoke remains an enigma, a ghost of human ambition and uncertainty. Its story connects us to the endurance, courage, and fragility of those who came before, while also reminding us that history is rarely neat or complete. And as we leave the shores of Roanoke behind, one question persists. What ultimately became of the men, women, and children who vanished into the forest, leaving only a single word carved in wood as a trace of their existence, still echoing across the centuries? From the vanished settlers of Roanoke, whose presence lingers only in whispers, carved letters, and traces upon the land, we now turn our gaze to the restless sea, where another profound disappearance has captivated imaginations for over a century. The Mary Celeste, a ship found adrift in the Atlantic Ocean in 1872, fully intact but mysteriously abandoned, remains one of history's most compelling maritime enigmas. Unlike the colony whose fate was swallowed by forest and tide, the Mary Celeste drifted silently across open water, her decks empty, her cargo untouched, leaving behind a question that has intrigued sailors, historians, and investigators ever since. What became of her crew? The Atlantic that carried the Mary Celeste is a landscape of both beauty and peril. Waves roll in endless patterns beneath a sky that can shift from calm serenity to violent tempest in moments. Salt spray and fog obscure vision, creating a world in which humans are at the mercy of nature's whims. On December 4, 1872, the ship was discovered by the crew of the Dei Gratia, a Canadian brig off the Azores. She floated upright, sails partly set, her cargo of denatured alcohol undisturbed, and yet there was no one aboard. Not a scream, not a body, not a note explaining the disappearance, only silence. Even now, imagining the empty deck swaying gently in the morning light evokes a chill, a profound sense of absence that transcends ordinary loss. The story of the Mary Celeste begins months earlier, when she set sail from New York Harbor bound for Genoa, Italy, carrying a cargo of industrial alcohol. Aboard were Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, young daughter, and a crew of 7. The voyage began routinely, yet from the very start, subtle details hint at the fragility of life at sea. Rough weather, shifting winds, and the constant vigilance required to navigate the Atlantic. When the Dei Gratia sighted the Mary Celeste, everything appeared normal at first glance, the rigging intact, personal belongings scattered in ordinary disarray. But the absence of life made the ordinary extraordinary, and the ordinary trace of human activity suddenly became eerie in its silence. Mainstream explanations attempt to reconstruct what might have happened. Some suggest that alcohol fumes in the hold could have triggered panic, prompting the crew to abandon ship temporarily, perhaps with a small boat, only to be overwhelmed by the sea. Others hypothesize sudden storms, rogue waves, or structural damage that left the crew fearing imminent disaster, compelling them to evacuate. Yet none of these scenarios can account fully for the lack of bodies, the careful maintenance of sails, or the fact that the ship continued to drift largely undisturbed. The evidence is incomplete, tantalizingly close to explanation, yet persistently elusive. Speculative theories add further layers to the mystery. Pirates, mutiny, or a sudden outbreak of disease have been suggested, though investigators of the time found little to support such claims. Some have proposed that the Mary Celeste encountered paranormal forces, a sea so powerful and capricious it could erase human presence without disturbing the vessel. Others consider the possibility of secret experiments with volatile cargo or mechanical failure that forced the crew to abandon ship. Fringe theories even imagine encounters with sea monsters, though these are rooted more in legend than evidence. What is undeniable is that the ship itself preserves a record of ordinary life interrupted by extraordinary absence, a story written in the curves of its deck, the tilt of its masts, and the quiet sway of its cargo. The human aspect of the Mary Celeste deepens the enigma. Captain Briggs was an experienced sailor, familiar with the Atlantic's tempests. His crew were skilled men, accustomed to the hardships of long voyages. For all their experience, they vanished without leaving a trace, highlighting the vulnerability of humans against nature's vast and unpredictable forces. What thoughts might have run through their minds in those final hours? Fear, confusion, or resignation? And what decisions could lead a seasoned crew to abandon a seaworthy vessel, leaving the very instruments of survival behind? Investigations of the Mary Celeste have yielded tantalizing but inconclusive clues. Her logbook, found intact, recorded nothing unusual after November 25, 1872, leaving a week-long gap before her discovery. Lifeboats were missing, suggesting evacuation, but no other vessels recorded their presence. Personal effects were scattered but intact, valuables untouched, and the cargo remained largely secure. Even forensic analysis of the ship's structure, ballast, and sails has produced no definitive answers, leaving the case open to interpretation. Every detail hints at a story partially told, yet the central question, the fate of the crew, remains unanswered. The mystery of the Mary Celeste is amplified by the psychology of absence. Seeing a ship fully provisioned, seaworthy, and yet devoid of human life evokes an almost visceral reaction. It challenges assumptions about safety, control, and the reliability of familiar systems. The ship floats as a paradox, perfectly intact, yet incomplete in its purpose, a vessel designed for human endeavor rendered eerily vacant. It is in this space, the intersection of familiarity and void, that the mind grapples with possibilities, constructing scenarios that may never be confirmed. Even today, the Mary Celeste captivates imaginations. Writers, filmmakers, and historians revisit her story, each offering new interpretations, yet none can provide certainty. The ship has become a symbol, a canvas on which human curiosity paints questions about risk, courage, and the inexplicable. The Atlantic preserves its secrets, waves eroding memory as much as they shape reality. Those who study the Mary Celeste confront the limitations of knowledge, the capriciousness of circumstance, and the profound way in which absence can speak as powerfully as presence. As we imagine the Mary Celeste drifting beneath a gray horizon, sunlight glinting on waves, the silence of the ship becomes almost tangible. Every rope, every sail, every piece of cargo bears witness to human effort interrupted, to a journey that began with purpose and ended in uncertainty. The vessel is at once a historical artifact and a psychological monument, a reminder that mystery need not be violent or destructive to resonate across time. It is enough for human absence to persist, for questions to endure, and for imagination to fill the spaces that evidence leaves empty. The vanishing of the Mary Celeste invites reflection on mortality, chance, and the fragile boundary between routine and catastrophe. How much did the crew understand about the danger that may have confronted them? Did they act rationally, or did fear overwhelm judgment? And what truths might remain submerged, just beneath the waves or lost to the currents of history, waiting for discovery, speculation, or revelation? Even as modern technology allows us to track ships with precision, model weather patterns, and analyze maritime incidents in detail, the Mary Celeste continues to evade explanation. Her decks, masts, and holds stand as a testament to human endeavor interrupted, a frozen moment of uncertainty preserved in the vastness of the Atlantic. And as we leave the empty decks behind in our imagination, one question persists, quietly and insistently. What became of those souls? And what secrets did the Mary Celeste carry across the ocean, untold and still haunting the waves? From the silent decks of the Mary Celeste, where an entire crew vanished into the vastness of the Atlantic, we now turn our attention to another vessel, not of wood and sail, but of parchment and ink, whose very existence challenges our understanding of history. The Vinland Map, a mysterious medieval artifact, depicts lands far to the west of Europe, including a region labeled Vinland, suggesting that Norse explorers may have reached North America centuries before Columbus. It is a map that bridges cartography and conjecture, scholarship and speculation, and, like the Mary Celeste, it carries an air of enigma that has captured the imagination of historians and adventurers alike. The map itself is unassuming at first glance. A single sheet of vellum, yellowed with age, slightly warped from centuries of storage, bears lines of black ink tracing coastlines, rivers, and settlements. Latin inscriptions identify regions, including familiar territories of Europe and Africa, but it is the far western extension, Vinland, that has fascinated scholars since the map first emerged in the mid-20th century. There, beyond the known world of medieval Europe, lies a land that hints at voyages, discoveries, and encounters that history books have long ignored or overlooked. The parchment seems fragile, yet it carries the weight of centuries, as if each stroke of ink contains whispers of lost journeys and untold stories. The Vinland Map first surfaced publicly in 1957, when it was brought to light by scholars examining medieval documents at Yale University's Beinecke Library. Its sudden appearance provoked excitement and skepticism alike. Mainstream historians noted that the map appeared consistent with known medieval cartographic practices. Coastlines were drawn in the style of contemporary mappamundi, and Latin notations reflected the scholarly conventions of the time. Yet the depiction of lands far to the west, potentially corresponding to parts of modern-day Newfoundland, was wholly unexpected. If authentic, the map would provide evidence of transatlantic exploration long before Columbus, rewriting a chapter of European history. Scientific examination has produced tantalizing but inconclusive results. Analyses of the ink, parchment, and chemical composition have suggested dates ranging from the early 15th century to later periods, leaving open questions about the map's authenticity. Some studies indicate the presence of substances that could have been used during medieval times, while others argue that certain components may reflect modern fabrication. Even the style of the drawing, its representation of coastlines, rivers, and settlements, both aligns with contemporary cartographic knowledge and hints at information that should have been unknown to European mapmakers at the time. The result is a document whose provenance and creation remain subject to intense debate. Mainstream scholarship has approached the Vinland Map cautiously. Some historians argue that it is a genuine product of medieval cartography, based on oral or written accounts of Norse voyages to Greenland and Vinland, perhaps derived from sagas passed down through generations. Others suggest that it may have been a copy of earlier maps or based on second-hand knowledge, reflecting speculation rather than first-hand exploration. While the presence of Vinland on the map aligns intriguingly with archaeological evidence of Norse settlements at Lancashire Meadows in Newfoundland, the map itself cannot conclusively prove such contact. It can only suggest the possibility, leaving interpretation open to both reason and imagination. Speculative interpretations add further intrigue. Some propose that the map reflects a hidden history of transatlantic exploration, suggesting that knowledge of the New World existed in Europe long before the voyages of Columbus and Cabot. Could the map be evidence of a forgotten network of explorers, traders, or scholars who glimpsed lands across the ocean, recording them in code or cartographic shorthand? Others speculate that the map may have been a hoax, created for political, economic, or scholarly purposes, its purpose to assert claims or prestige rather than document discovery. Each theory, whether mainstream or fringe, underscores the central fascination. The map points toward a history we may only partially understand, a story written in ink and shadow. The human dimension of the Vinland Map is equally compelling. Whoever created it, cartographer, scribe, or scholar, invested thought, skill, and intent into each line. They had a vision of the world, a conception of lands beyond the horizon, and the desire to record that vision for others. Yet centuries later, the map's meaning remains obscured, a conversation frozen in time. What sources did they rely upon? What voyages inspired these depictions? And how much of their knowledge was lost, deliberately or accidentally, as the centuries passed? The map, in its quiet, fragile form, is a testament to human curiosity and the desire to extend understanding beyond immediate experience. Geography and archaeology provide partial context, but also amplify the mystery. The Lance-aux Meadows settlement, dated to around 1000 AD, confirms that Norse voyagers reached North America centuries before European colonization. Yet the Vinland Map suggests a broader knowledge of these lands than the sagas indicate, including rivers, forests, and settlements that have yet to be conclusively identified. Does the map reflect direct observation, second-hand reports, or creative reconstruction? Was it an imaginative exercise, a teaching tool, or an attempt to claim authority over unknown territories? The parchment itself offers no answers, only the subtle clues embedded in its lines and inscriptions. Even today, the Vinland Map continues to provoke fascination, debate, and investigation. Scholars employ modern techniques, spectrography, radiocarbon dating, and forensic ink analysis. Yet the questions remain unresolved. The map endures as both a historical document and a symbol of human longing, the desire to know, to explore, and to extend the boundaries of the world. Like other enigmas we have explored, the vanishing of the Mary Celeste, the lost colony of Roanoke, and the Coral Castle, the Vinland Map reminds us that knowledge is often incomplete, layered with uncertainty, and tantalizingly close yet frustratingly out of reach. Standing before the map, one cannot help but imagine the hands that drew it, the voyages it may commemorate, and the centuries it has silently witnessed. The ink traces suggest paths across oceans, settlements on distant shores, and a vision of the world that exceeded contemporary understanding. Yet, despite scientific scrutiny and historical research, the map's ultimate truth remains elusive. Was it a genuine record of Norse exploration, a copy of ancient knowledge, or a deliberate forgery designed to intrigue and confound? The parchment offers no reply, only the quiet, persistent echo of possibility. The Vinland Map, in its fragility and detail, embodies the tension between knowledge and mystery, between what is recorded and what remains hidden. It challenges assumptions, invites curiosity, and preserves a story that may never be fully told. And as we trace the coastlines of Vinland with our eyes, wondering who first glimpsed these distant shores, one question remains. What secrets of exploration, travel, and human ambition lie hidden in the folds of history, waiting for discovery, interpretation, or perhaps simply for the imagination to fill in the gaps that time has left behind? The sun hangs low over the endless dunes of the empty quarter, the Rub al-Khali, painting the sands in deep, molten shades of gold and crimson. The wind whispers through the towering ridges of sand, carrying with it the memory of a land that has been largely untouched for millennia. Beneath these sweeping deserts of southern Arabia lies a story long buried, a city that may have been real, or may exist only in legend. The fabled city of Ubar, often referred to as the Atlantis of the sands. The first glimpses of Ubar come not from archaeology, but from the echoes of ancient texts. The Quran mentions a people called Ad, who were said to inhabit a city of grandeur, wealthy and mighty, yet destroyed by a divine wind for their arrogance and corruption. Early Arab geographers like al-Hashimi and al-Muqaddasi referenced a prosperous desert settlement, long vanished, its ruins swallowed by the relentless sands. For centuries, travelers and scholars alike searched for its precise location, guided only by fragmented maps and oral traditions carried from one generation to the next. Modern exploration began in earnest in the 20th century, fueled by curiosity and satellite technology. In the 1990s, an expedition funded by NASA and led by archaeologist Juris Zarins used satellite imagery to trace ancient caravan routes across Oman, Yemen, and Saudi Arabia. These lines, etched into the desert for thousands of years, pointed to a network of trade and travel, suggesting the existence of a major trading hub at the heart of the Arabian Peninsula. Some believed that Ubar had thrived along these routes, trading frankincense, myrrh, and other precious commodities with distant empires. Yet when the archaeologists finally arrived at the site, identified as Shisr, the evidence was subtle, almost whispering. A collapsed fortress-like structure lay half-buried beneath the sand, fragments of walls and pottery scattered across the rocky desert floor. Carbon dating suggested that the city had flourished as early as the 3rd millennium BC, then gradually faded into obscurity. For many, this seemed to confirm the legend. Ubar had existed, but its grandeur was far more modest than the stories had promised. The desert had claimed it, as it claims everything here. And yet, even with the physical evidence, the mystery deepened. The landscape itself seemed to defy simple explanations. Massive sinkholes riddled the area, natural caverns that had swallowed entire sections of the ruins. Could these geological formations have contributed to the disappearance of Ubar, or were they a coincidence? Some researchers have suggested that underground water channels, once sustaining the city's oasis, may have dried up, leaving the population stranded in a harsh, unforgiving desert. Others speculate that seismic activity could have caused portions of the settlement to collapse into subterranean voids. Then there are the stories that linger beyond archaeology, the whispers of something lost that science struggles to fully capture. Local Bedouin traditions speak of a city that appeared in the desert like a mirage, its walls gleaming in the heat, only to vanish when approached. Could these tales be exaggerations of real events, or are they remnants of a collective memory of cataclysm? Some fringe theorists have even proposed more extraordinary explanations. Perhaps Ubar was a hub of advanced knowledge, a civilization wiped out before it could leave a lasting imprint, leaving only fragments in myth and sand. Trade records from neighboring regions add another layer of intrigue. Ancient inscriptions from southern Mesopotamia and the lands of the Levant, including Palestine, reference caravans laden with incense and exotic goods arriving from the Arabian interior. Could Ubar have been the linchpin connecting distant empires across the deserts, its disappearance creating a ripple felt across the known world? If so, why does the archaeological record show so little, a tantalizing glimpse rather than a full story? Even the etymology of Ubar invites speculation. Some scholars link the name to Iram of the Pillars, mentioned in the Quran, while others suggest it might have simply meant a passage or a caravan stop. Language, like sand, shifts and erodes with time, leaving only traces that tease more than they reveal. And yet, these traces are powerful. They hint at a civilization sophisticated enough to leave a mark on memory, even if not entirely on the earth itself. Technology has brought us closer than ever to understanding Ubar, yet it also magnifies the gaps in our knowledge. Satellite imagery reveals the faint outlines of roads and walls invisible to the naked eye, as if the desert itself preserves the memory of human endeavor in geometric whispers. Excavations uncover shards of pottery, remnants of buildings, and evidence of trade. But the true scale of the city, its culture, and the reason for its demise remain elusive. Was it a slow decline caused by environmental change, or a sudden catastrophe that erased centuries of human achievement in a single generation? Perhaps the most haunting element of Ubar is its absence. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, there is no single monument to gaze upon, no towering relic to anchor the imagination. Instead, there is sand, shifting, unyielding, and indifferent to human memory. The mystery of Ubar is not just about what we have found, but about what has been lost. In a land that has seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, Ubar remains a question suspended between history and legend, tangible and intangible all at once. As night falls over the desert, the wind sweeps across the dunes, carrying the cold and the silence of millennia. One cannot help but wonder, beneath the sands, are there still chambers of Ubar untouched, stories of a people and a culture waiting to be uncovered? Or has time, inexorable and patient, claimed everything, leaving only a legend to inspire our imagination? The city of Ubar challenges the boundaries between myth and history. It asks us to consider the impermanence of human achievement, the ways in which nature and time can erase even the mightiest of civilizations. And as the stars emerge over the empty quarter, bright and cold above the desert night, the question lingers: how much of what we call lost is truly gone, and how much is simply waiting for us to remember? As the sun rises over the arid plains of northern Egypt, its light spills across a landscape of shifting sands, ancient ruins, and the silent, enduring monuments of a civilization that thrived thousands of years ago. Among the storied sites of this land, one of the most elusive and enigmatic remains hidden beneath the shadows of history itself: the Labyrinth of Egypt, a structure that has intrigued travelers, historians, and archaeologists for millennia. Unlike the towering pyramids that dominate the horizon, the labyrinth exists in fragments, described in ancient texts yet largely lost to the passage of time, its true scale and purpose still a matter of speculation. The earliest accounts of the labyrinth come from Herodotus, the Greek historian of the 5th century BC, who described a sprawling complex near Lake Moeris in the Fayum oasis. According to his writings, the structure contained thousands of rooms and halls, both above and below ground, with walls carved from massive blocks of limestone. The purpose of the labyrinth, he wrote, was twofold: a place of governance, where pharaohs conducted administrative business, and a sacred space, home to temples and shrines honoring the gods. Herodotus claimed it surpassed even the grandeur of the pyramids, a remarkable testament to the skill and ambition of Egypt's builders. Archaeological exploration, however, has revealed only tantalizing traces. In the late 19th century, the German archaeologist Flinders Petrie uncovered remnants of mud brick walls and subterranean chambers near the site identified as the Labyrinth. Stone inscriptions, pottery fragments, and what appeared to be ceremonial altars suggested a complex far larger than the visible ruins. Yet the full extent of the structure remains buried beneath centuries of silt, sand, and the encroachment of the desert. Modern excavations have confirmed the existence of multiple interconnected buildings, some rising above the surface, others extending into tunnels that hint at a hidden world below. The more scholars have studied these ruins, the more questions emerge. How could such a vast and intricate complex have been constructed in an era when engineering relied on simple tools and human labor alone? Some suggest that the labyrinth was not a single building, but a sprawling series of temples, administrative halls, and storage facilities spread across the Fayum region and connected by canals and causeways. Others wonder whether its design served a symbolic purpose, representing the Egyptian vision of the cosmos, a maze through which priests and pharaohs could navigate the earthly and divine realms. Yet even with these theories, the labyrinth maintains an air of mystery. Ancient Egyptian texts refer to the structure with reverence, yet offer few concrete details. The so-called Book of the Dead alludes to ceremonial pathways, sacred chambers, and secret rooms accessible only to the initiated. Could these references hint at subterranean libraries or archives holding records of knowledge long lost to time? Some fringe researchers speculate that the labyrinth might have housed treasures, sacred relics, or even advanced technology beyond our current understanding, though no evidence has confirmed such claims. The physical evidence, though partial, is compelling. Walls bearing inscriptions of gods and kings, columns carved from stone with precision that still impresses modern engineers, and passageways that descend into shadowed chambers suggest an architectural sophistication remarkable for its time. Certain corridors align with astronomical markers, prompting speculation that the labyrinth may have served as more than a political or religious center. Perhaps it was a repository of cosmic knowledge, a place where Egyptian priests mapped the heavens as meticulously as the land below. Even the scale of the labyrinth is debated. Classical sources describe it as covering an area larger than the city of Thebes, yet the excavated remains occupy only a fraction of this. Was the rest buried beneath centuries of sedimentation, or were these accounts exaggerated over time, transformed by travelers' awe and the human tendency to mythologize? Some researchers suggest that canals surrounding the complex may have been misinterpreted as walls or streets, inflating the perception of its size. Others, considering the ingenuity of Egyptian engineering, argue that the labyrinth may indeed have extended far beyond what has been unearthed, hidden beneath desert sands and agricultural fields reclaimed over the centuries. Local lore adds another layer of intrigue. Villagers in the Fayum region speak of tunnels and hidden chambers beneath their feet, stories passed down through generations. Some claim that certain sections are sealed by ancient curses or protected by labyrinthine passages designed to confuse intruders. While such tales are impossible to verify, they echo the ancient descriptions of a structure designed not only to impress, but to confound, guiding the initiated while concealing its deepest secrets. The labyrinth's enigmatic nature extends even to its demise. While no cataclysmic event destroyed the complex, the rise of successive civilizations, shifts in the Nile's course, and the relentless encroachment of desert sands led to its gradual obscurity. Over time, the memory of its grandeur faded, surviving only in texts and oral traditions. And yet, even in partial ruin, the labyrinth continues to challenge our understanding of ancient Egypt, reminding us that for all the pyramids, temples, and monuments that survive, some achievements have been almost entirely erased by time. Modern technology offers new ways to explore these mysteries. Ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, and 3D modeling allow archaeologists to glimpse structures hidden beneath layers of earth and sand, revealing patterns invisible to the naked eye. Yet, with each discovery comes more questions. Are we seeing the labyrinth as it truly was, or merely fragments reshaped by centuries of natural forces and human intervention? Could there be chambers still untouched, holding stories and artifacts that would reshape our understanding of Egyptian civilization? As the wind sweeps across the Fayum plains, stirring dust and the faint scent of Nile silt, one cannot help but feel a sense of awe. The labyrinth exists both as a historical site and as a symbol, a reminder of the ambition and ingenuity of those who came before, and of the mysteries that endure even in the face of human curiosity. Unlike the pyramids, which dominate the landscape and the imagination, the labyrinth invites subtle contemplation, urging us to consider not only what remains, but what may still lie hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be rediscovered. The story of the Labyrinth is not one of closure, but of questions that stretch across millennia. What secrets did its chambers hold? How much knowledge and culture has been lost to time? And perhaps most compellingly, how much of our history lies just out of reach, buried beneath sands we have yet to fully uncover? The Labyrinth of Egypt reminds us that some mysteries are never entirely solved. They endure quietly beneath the desert, inviting us to wonder, explore, and imagine. High in the windswept altiplano of Bolivia, near the shores of Lake Titicaca, lies a landscape both harsh and mesmerizing. Rugged mountains rise sharply from salt-encrusted plains, their peaks bathed in the cool light of dawn, while the lake stretches endlessly, a mirror reflecting clouds and sky. It is here, amid this stark, almost otherworldly terrain, that one of the most enigmatic artifacts of the ancient Americas was discovered, the Fuente Magna Bowl. Small in size but immense in mystery, the bowl has captivated archaeologists, linguists, and historians since it first came to wider attention in the 1950s. Its surface is unassuming, carved from a hard, local stone, yet it bears inscriptions whose meaning and origin challenge conventional narratives of human history. The bowl was found near a modest archaeological site in the vicinity of the Fuente Magna complex, a region dotted with stone ruins whose origins remain partially obscured by the passage of time. Unlike the monumental constructions of Tiwanaku or the Incan centers that would flourish centuries later, these ruins are subtle: stone walls, foundations, and scattered fragments that hint at human habitation, trade, and ritual. Yet the bowl, with its carefully etched symbols, seems to belong to a different story altogether. What makes the Fuente Magna bowl extraordinary is its inscription. The markings appear to be cuneiform, similar in style to the script used in ancient Mesopotamia, yet centuries and thousands of miles removed from the cultures that produced them. Scholars have long debated whether these similarities are coincidental, the result of independent invention, or evidence of contact across vast distances. Could this humble object truly suggest that ancient civilizations reached farther than we currently understand? Or is it a product of a local culture drawing inspiration from unknown sources, blending their own traditions with motifs that resonate across continents? Mainstream archaeological interpretations tend toward caution. Most researchers place the bowl in a context consistent with Andean prehistory, dating its creation to between 2000 and 1500 BC, a period when complex societies were emerging around Lake Titicaca. These communities built terraces, canals, and ceremonial structures, demonstrating sophistication in agriculture, astronomy, and stonework. The bowl, in this light, could be viewed as a ritual object, a vessel perhaps used in offerings or ceremonies related to water, fertility, or the cosmos. Its carvings might reflect a local symbolic system, one that has not survived elsewhere and therefore remains opaque to modern understanding. Yet the linguistic element cannot be dismissed lightly. The resemblance of the inscriptions to Sumerian cuneiform, some scholars argue, is too precise to ignore. Linguists have attempted translations, suggesting that the bowl may contain a record of names, prayers, or even trade-related texts. If verified, such a connection would imply an extraordinary transoceanic awareness, challenging assumptions about the isolation of pre-Columbian civilizations in the Americas. How could such knowledge have traveled? Were there ancient voyagers who crossed oceans long before the voyages of Columbus, leaving behind traces in stone and clay that survive only as fragments today? Complicating matters further is the context of its discovery. The bowl was not carefully excavated by trained archaeologists in a stratified dig. It was found amid scattered stones and ruins, its provenance partially obscured by decades of looting and informal collection. This lack of contextual certainty has fueled both skepticism and fascination. Some critics argue that the inscriptions might have been forged or misinterpreted, while others point out that similar anomalies, objects that do not fit neatly into established historical narratives, have been found elsewhere, suggesting that our understanding of ancient human interaction remains incomplete. The physicality of the bowl is striking. It is carved from a dense, durable stone, expertly smoothed and shaped. Its interior and exterior are meticulously polished, the symbols etched with a precision that speaks to skilled craftsmanship. Observers note that it bears marks of both functional use and ceremonial significance, hinting that it was more than mere decoration. Could the artisans have been preserving knowledge, astronomical, religious, or geographical, encoded in symbols intended to endure long after the original language was forgotten? Or was it a bridge between cultures, a small vessel carrying ideas from one distant world to another? The Fuente Magna Bowl also invites speculation about the wider ancient landscape of the Andes. The Lake Titicaca region has long been associated with myth and origin stories. Local traditions speak of great floods, of the emergence of culture heroes, and of cities lost to time beneath the lake's waters. Could the bowl be a relic of a pre-Tiwanaku civilization, one that had contact with distant lands or retained knowledge of symbolic systems that defy easy categorization? If so, how much of human history, particularly that of long-vanished societies, remains hidden just beyond the reach of our instruments and our understanding? Even more curious are the parallels drawn by those exploring the bowl's stylistic elements. Some point to the geometric motifs on the rim, reminiscent of designs found in early Middle Eastern and Mediterranean pottery. Others highlight the arrangement of symbols within the bowl's interior, noting patterns that correspond to early numerical or calendrical systems. Could these similarities indicate a shared cognitive approach to recording information? Or do they hint at connections that we have yet to fully comprehend, lines of contact and influence that span oceans and continents long before recorded history? The mystery deepens when considering the implications of the bowl for broader historical narratives. If the inscriptions are authentic and accurately interpreted, they challenge the conventional view of isolated development in the ancient Americas. They invite questions about the movement of peoples, the exchange of knowledge, and the networks of communication that may have existed far earlier than previously imagined. And yet, without further corroborating evidence, other artifacts, texts, or securely dated ruins, the bowl remains an enigmatic outlier, a tantalizing hint of something larger that may lie buried beneath the earth or beneath layers of time. For those who study it, the Fuente Magna Bowl is more than an object. It is a question etched in stone. It forces us to confront the limitations of historical knowledge and the assumptions we bring to the past. Are anomalies like this simply the exceptions that prove the rule, or are they clues to a hidden dimension of human history, a web of connections that has largely disappeared? Every line, every symbol, every smoothed surface invites reflection, demanding that we look carefully at what we thought we knew and remain open to what we do not. As the wind sweeps across the Altiplano, carrying the chill of mountain air and the scent of distant lake waters, one can almost imagine the hands that shaped the bowl so many centuries ago. Did they intend for it to be discovered millennia later? Or was it simply a part of everyday life, a sacred tool now imbued with mystery only through the lens of modern curiosity? The region itself seems to guard its secrets, from sun-bleached ruins to the silent, glimmering waters of Lake Titicaca, echoing a sense of wonder that has endured for generations. The Fuente Magna Bowl, like the lost city of Ubar or the Labyrinth of Egypt, is not merely a relic of a distant past. It is a reminder that history is often more complex and enigmatic than we imagine. It challenges us to consider the breadth of human ingenuity, the possibility of connections across continents, and the traces of civilizations whose stories have been partially erased by time. What knowledge has been lost to the ages, and how many more artifacts lie waiting, still hidden, to rewrite the story of our ancestors? In the quiet of the highlands, under a sky of infinite blue and shifting clouds, the bowl sits, a small, enigmatic vessel holding questions that may never be fully answered. It invites us to ponder, to explore, and to wonder. What else might remain hidden in the remote corners of the world, waiting to remind us that the past is never as settled as it seems? Nestled in a quiet valley near Faifley, just outside Glasgow in Scotland, lies a slab of stone unlike any other, a massive expanse of weathered rock, its surface etched with hundreds of enigmatic symbols. Known today as the Cochno Stone, this prehistoric monument is both imposing and intimate, stretching nearly 43 feet long and 26 feet wide, a canvas of human expression frozen in time. Beneath the gray Scottish sky, the carvings seem to shimmer with shadows, the low winter sun tracing shallow grooves and spirals that have survived millennia. At first glance, it is simply a stone, yet its surface is alive with meaning, patterns that have confounded archaeologists and historians since its modern discovery in the late 19th century. The carvings themselves are mesmerizing in their complexity. Circles, spirals, cup marks, and geometric shapes are arranged in ways that defy immediate interpretation. Some spirals appear solitary, others interconnected, forming labyrinthine paths that lead the eye across the stone in a rhythm almost hypnotic. Cup and ring marks, a hallmark of prehistoric rock art across Europe, dominate the surface. But the Cochno Stone is unusually dense with these motifs, far more concentrated than other sites in Scotland or Britain. Could this concentration indicate a particularly sacred or ceremonial location? Or does it hint at something beyond ritual, a coded message, a map, or an astronomical record lost to time? Historical accounts suggest that the carvings date to the Bronze Age, approximately 3000 to 2000 BC. Archaeologists generally agree on this time frame, situating the stone within a broader tradition of megalithic art found across Britain and Western Europe. Yet, despite this consensus, no definitive explanation has been reached for the stone's purpose. Was it a site of ritual offerings, a ceremonial space for ancient gatherings, or a symbolic representation of cosmology, the cycles of the sun, moon, and stars? Its sheer size implies that it was important, deliberately chosen and prepared, not simply a casual carving on an ordinary boulder. The stone's modern rediscovery only heightened its mystery. In 1887, Alexander Nesbitt documented the Cochno Stone, capturing detailed sketches of the carvings and noting their intricate interconnections. Subsequent visits revealed erosion, vandalism, and the slow march of time threatening the stone's preservation. In the 1960s, to protect it from further damage, authorities buried the Cochno Stone beneath soil, a measure that has kept it hidden for decades. Today, archaeologists and enthusiasts alike debate the merits of uncovering it again, balancing preservation against the desire to study its secrets firsthand. One of the most tantalizing questions concerns the meaning of the symbols themselves. Scholars have proposed numerous interpretations. Some view the carvings as ritualistic, perhaps associated with ancestor worship or fertility rites. Others suggest a practical function, mapping local water sources, settlements, or even seasonal migration routes. More speculative theories have emerged over the years. Certain researchers argue that the spirals and cup marks could encode astronomical information, charting solstices, lunar cycles, or the movements of planets visible to the naked eye. Others point to the patterns as evidence of early symbolic language or proto-writing, a system of signs intended to convey information beyond the immediate physical world. Despite decades of study, the stone continues to resist definitive understanding. Modern imaging techniques, including photogrammetry and 3D laser scanning, have revealed subtle details invisible to the naked eye. Faint lines connecting cup marks, micro-spirals etched between larger motifs, and hidden depressions suggesting that parts of the surface may have been deliberately aligned with celestial events. Yet even these sophisticated analyses raise further questions. Did the creators intend for these details to be functional, symbolic, or purely aesthetic? And if they were functional, what knowledge did they encode, and how was it meant to be read? The Cochno Stone also sits within a broader landscape of mystery. Scotland is rich with megalithic monuments, standing stones, stone circles, burial cairns, and yet few are as densely marked as this slab. Was it a focal point for the surrounding region, a sacred site drawing communities together? Did the designs reflect a shared cosmology, a ritual calendar, or a spiritual map of the land? Some theorists have even speculated that the Cochno Stone, along with other cup and ring marked stones, hints at knowledge or practices that were widespread but have left little trace in written or material culture. Local lore adds another layer of fascination. Stories persist of the Cochno Stone possessing protective or supernatural qualities, with warnings that its hidden meanings are not easily understood by the uninitiated. Such tales, passed down orally, suggest that the stone has long inspired awe and curiosity, a bridge between the living world and the beliefs of those who carved it thousands of years ago. Could these oral traditions be echoes of ancient knowledge, fragments of a worldview lost to the ages but preserved in collective memory? The burial of the stone in the 20th century further intensifies its mystique. By hiding it beneath layers of soil, the stone became both preserved and obscured, simultaneously shielding it from harm and removing it from the gaze of scholars and the public. Yet, even in its concealment, the Cochno Stone continues to provoke questions. What secrets lie beneath the soil, waiting to be rediscovered? How much of its surface, carefully etched millennia ago, remains intact? And what could modern study reveal if it were fully exposed again? The Cochno Stone, like the Labyrinth of Egypt, the Fuente Magna Bowl, and the lost city of Ubar, challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about prehistoric human knowledge. It reminds us that our ancestors were capable of remarkable feats of observation, planning, and symbolic expression. Yet, for all that we can measure and record, the stone maintains its mystery. Its patterns resist simple explanation, its meaning eludes definitive translation, and its silence is as compelling as its carvings. As the wind sweeps through the valley, brushing the hidden stone beneath the soil, one cannot help but wonder, what inspired the hands that etched these symbols? Was it a spiritual vision, a practical need, or an attempt to record knowledge we are not yet ready to understand? And beyond the Cochno Stone itself, how many other markers of human thought, intelligence, and culture lie buried, waiting for the curious and patient to uncover them? The mystery endures, quietly beneath the earth, a reminder that history is often more intricate and enigmatic than it appears. Some truths are partially revealed, and some remain tantalizingly out of reach, leaving only questions and a profound sense of wonder. The Cochno Stone challenges us to slow down, to look carefully, and to accept that some of the most compelling stories of our past are not written in books or monuments, but etched in stone, waiting silently to be read by those willing to see beyond the surface. Beneath the sun-baked plains of Cappadocia, in central Turkey, the earth hides secrets that seem almost impossibly human. From above, the landscape appears surreal but tranquil. Soft volcanic tuff formations rise like giant mushrooms, their pale surfaces carved by wind and rain over millennia. Villages perch on hillsides, and winding paths trace the contours of the terrain. Yet the true wonder lies below the surface, where an elaborate labyrinth of tunnels and chambers extends deep into the volcanic rock. This is Derinkuyu, a subterranean city whose scale and complexity have fascinated historians, archaeologists, and travelers for generations. The entrance is unassuming, a small doorway concealed among ordinary rock formations. But beyond it lies a network of passages descending over 85 meters underground, with corridors, staircases, storage rooms, and hidden chambers stretching for miles. Entire communities, it seems, once lived here, taking refuge from the dangers of the world above. As one moves deeper, the air grows cooler, the light dimmer, and the sense of history more palpable. The walls, carved with precision from soft volcanic stone, bear traces of millennia of habitation, niches for lamps, stone doors designed to seal off passageways, wells that once drew water from deep aquifers. It is both awe-inspiring and unsettling to consider how much of human ingenuity exists below the surface, hidden from view. The origins of Derinkuyu remain a subject of debate. Mainstream scholarship suggests that the earliest tunnels may date back as far as the 8th to 7th centuries BC, built by the Phrygians and expanded over the centuries by successive civilizations. The city was designed as a refuge, a place to hide from invaders, to survive sieges, and to continue daily life while the world above was in turmoil. Evidence of living quarters, communal spaces, kitchens, stables, and chapels points to a sophisticated social organization capable of supporting thousands of inhabitants underground. It is a feat of engineering remarkable for any era, yet the full purpose of the tunnels still invites speculation. What is particularly striking about Derinkuyu is its depth and scale. The subterranean city descends in levels, each carefully planned, with ventilation shafts, wells, and narrow stairways that connect chambers in a way that suggests careful consideration of airflow, water supply, and security. Massive circular stone doors, designed to be rolled into place, could isolate sections of the city in moments, offering protection from intruders. Could this intricate planning reflect a society accustomed to frequent threats, or were the tunnels part of something more, an underground culture with knowledge of engineering and urban design that surpasses what we usually associate with the ancient world? Scholars have long noted that Derinkuyu is not unique in Cappadocia. Nearby underground complexes such as Kaimakli and Ozkanak hint at a widespread network of subterranean settlements. Some researchers propose that these connected cities formed a defensive system, allowing communities to relocate, hide, and communicate beneath the earth for generations. Yet even within this framework, the sheer size of Derinkuyu and the sophistication of its engineering remain extraordinary. How could ancient societies, lacking modern tools, carve hundreds of rooms, ventilation shafts, and corridors deep into volcanic rock, all while ensuring structural stability? The function of the city raises further questions. While defensive refuge is a plausible explanation, certain chambers suggest ceremonial or symbolic purposes. Chapels, religious niches, and frescoed walls indicate that life underground was not solely utilitarian, it was also spiritual. Could the tunnels have served as a place for ritual, perhaps a site where communities sought connection with the divine while hidden from the dangers of the surface? And if so, what knowledge, beliefs, or traditions might have been preserved within these rock-hewn walls, passed down in silence through generations? More speculative theories push the boundaries of conventional understanding. Some propose that the underground cities were part of an extensive network designed for rapid migration, trade, or secret communication. Others suggest that their construction may have been guided by forgotten knowledge of geology and architecture, perhaps passed down from ancient civilizations now lost to history. Even fringe interpretations consider the possibility of these tunnels serving as a repository for sacred or arcane knowledge, hidden deliberately to protect it from outsiders. While such ideas remain unproven, they underscore the enigmatic aura that surrounds Derinkuyu and its subterranean neighbors. The air within the tunnels is heavy with history. The faint scent of earth and stone mingles with centuries of human presence. The narrow corridors seem to stretch into infinity, guiding the imagination as much as the feet. It is easy to envision families moving silently through the passages, carrying water from wells, preparing food in hidden kitchens, and performing rituals in dimly lit chapels. The experience evokes questions about resilience, ingenuity, and the ways in which humans have adapted to extreme circumstances throughout history. Despite extensive study, many aspects of Derinkuyu remain unresolved. Archaeologists continue to debate the total number of levels, the full extent of the network, and the chronology of its construction. Modern technology, including 3D scanning and geophysical surveys, has begun to reveal previously unseen passages and chambers, hinting at spaces that may never have been recorded by earlier explorers. How much remains undiscovered, and what might these hidden areas tell us about the people who once called this subterranean world home? The tunnels of Derinkuyu also invite reflection on the relationship between humans and their environment. By carving homes beneath the surface, these ancient societies transformed the earth itself into a sanctuary, reshaping nature to meet both practical and spiritual needs. It is a reminder that innovation is not always above ground, that some of the most remarkable feats of human creativity occur out of sight, often in response to necessity, danger, or belief. As one ascends the final stairways to the light above, the contrast is striking. The world outside seems ordinary, sunlight spilling over rolling hills and rocky outcrops, but beneath it lies a city that is anything but ordinary, a testament to human perseverance, ingenuity, and mystery. Derinkuyu challenges our understanding of ancient civilizations, inviting us to consider the hidden layers of human history that exist just below the surface, waiting to be explored. The hidden tunnels of Derinkuyu, like the Cochno Stone, the Fuente Magna Bowl, and the Labyrinth of Egypt, resist simple explanation. They are not merely archaeological curiosities. They are reminders of the depth of human ingenuity and the mysteries that endure despite centuries of investigation. What motivated their construction? What knowledge, beliefs, or traditions have been lost within their stone walls? And most compellingly, how much of our past, like Derinkuyu itself, remains hidden beneath the surface, waiting for those willing to descend and seek answers? In the quiet of the underground chambers, one cannot help but feel the presence of those who carved, lived, and survived here. Their lives, fears, and aspirations are etched into the stone, yet much remains undeciphered. And as the shadows lengthen and the air grows still, the tunnels pose a final, lingering question. How much of human history is hidden from sight, preserved in silence beneath the ground, waiting for discovery by the curious and patient few? Along the sun-drenched plains and river valleys of southern Iberia, where the Guadalquivir wins its way to the Atlantic, a civilization once thrived that has long since slipped through the cracks of history. Tartessos, an ancient kingdom of wealth, culture, and mystery, lingers today mostly in legend, in fragmented accounts by Greek and Roman writers, and in tantalizing traces uncovered by modern archaeology. From above, the landscape appears serene, olive groves, fertile fields, and low hills kissed by the golden light of late afternoon. Yet beneath this seemingly quiet terrain lies the echo of a civilization whose very existence invites both wonder and skepticism. The earliest mentions of Tartessos come from classical authors such as Herodotus and Strabo. They described a prosperous society in what is now Andalusia, Spain, noting its extraordinary wealth in silver, tin, and other metals, as well as its skilled artisans and traders. According to these accounts, Tartessos was a kingdom with a king, monumental cities, and a thriving maritime network that extended along the Atlantic coast and into the Mediterranean. Strabo claimed that Tartessos existed near the mouth of the Guadalquivir River, with cities that gleamed with metalwork and stone constructions. Yet centuries of subsequent conquest, natural changes in river courses, and shifting political landscapes have erased nearly all physical traces of the kingdom, leaving modern scholars to reconstruct its story from fragments of text, archaeology, and legend. Archaeological evidence suggests that Tartessos flourished from approximately 1000 to 500 BC, a period coinciding with the rise of Greek colonization along the Iberian coasts. Excavations in the region have uncovered settlements rich in imported goods, ceramics from the eastern Mediterranean, Phoenician inscriptions, and metal artifacts demonstrating advanced craftsmanship. It is widely believed that Tartessos served as a key intermediary in the trade of tin and silver, connecting the mineral-rich Iberian interior with the bustling markets of Phoenicia, Greece, and Egypt. Its rivers and estuaries facilitated navigation, while its coastal ports allowed merchants to move goods across vast distances. Yet, despite this evidence, the very heart of Tartessos, the city or cities described in classical texts, remains elusive. Where exactly did the great capital rise, and what form did it take? Archaeologists have proposed locations near modern-day Huelva or Seville, but shifting riverbeds, flooding, and centuries of sedimentation have likely concealed much of the urban landscape. Some even suggest that Tartessos may have comprised a network of city-states rather than a single monumental capital, a loose confederation bound together by trade, culture, and shared religious practice. The economy of Tartessos, rooted in metals and maritime trade, suggests sophistication and influence beyond what the surviving physical evidence can demonstrate. Greek traders wrote of kings adorned in gold and silver, of treasures amassed from mines in the nearby Sierra Morena, and of markets filled with exotic goods from across the Mediterranean. These descriptions paint a picture of a society that was both materially wealthy and socially complex. But wealth alone does not account for Tartessos's enduring allure. It is the combination of this material opulence with the civilization's near-complete disappearance that fuels fascination and speculation. Religion and ritual appear to have been central to Tartessian culture. Excavations have revealed sanctuaries with votive offerings as well as burial sites suggesting a belief in an afterlife or divine favor. Some researchers point to the continuity of certain motifs in Iberian art, spirals, geometric designs, and animal figures, as indicative of religious or cosmological significance. Could Tartessos have been a center for knowledge as well as wealth, a society that recorded its understanding of the cosmos, human nature, or the cycles of life through both art and ritual? Even more enigmatic are the connections suggested by Phoenician accounts. Tartessos appears repeatedly in the records of Mediterranean traders, who speak of kings with names that seem almost mythic. Argentonios, who supposedly ruled for 80 years, a figure whose longevity and influence stretch the imagination. Some scholars suggest that these stories were exaggerated or misinterpreted, yet the consistency across independent accounts raises questions. Was Tartessos simply a wealthy trade hub, or did it possess cultural and technological sophistication that impressed the Mediterranean world? And if so, why did it vanish so thoroughly from memory? Speculative theories abound. Some suggest that Tartessos may have been destroyed or abandoned due to environmental factors. Shifting river courses, flooding, or climatic change could have rendered its urban centers uninhabitable. Others argue that the expansion of other powers, Carthaginians, Greeks, and later Romans, erased Tartessos, subsuming its culture into larger empires while leaving only fragmentary traces. A more extraordinary possibility, entertained by fringe researchers, is that Tartessos was a civilization of advanced knowledge, a repository of trade secrets, metallurgy, and cultural achievements lost to time. While there is little hard evidence to support such claims, the idea endures because Tartessos' disappearance is so complete, leaving only tantalizing hints in classical writings and scattered artifacts. Trade networks may provide further insight into Tartessos' significance. Archaeologists have identified Phoenician inscriptions and Greek ceramics in Andalusian sites, suggesting that Tartessos was integrated into broader Mediterranean commerce. Silver and tin, both highly valuable metals, flowed from the interior to coastal ports, feeding economies thousands of miles away. Could Tartessos have served as a linchpin for these networks, controlling trade routes and resources, while influencing art, culture, and governance far beyond its borders? Or were these connections incidental, the result of natural trade patterns, rather than centralized control? Despite these insights, the physical evidence remains tantalizingly sparse. Unlike Mesopotamian ziggurats or Egyptian pyramids, Tartessian cities left no monumental stone structures that survive in situ. Most evidence comes from burial mounds, small settlements, and objects of metal and ceramics. Some researchers argue that urban centers may have been constructed largely from wood and mud brick, materials that decay rapidly over centuries. Others suggest that the cities may now lie buried beneath layers of sediment, lost to the natural course of rivers or to agricultural development over millennia. Each new excavation brings fragments and questions, but the heart of Tartessos remains hidden, a civilization whose outline is more impression than image. Language and writing add another layer of mystery. Tartessian inscriptions found on stelae and pottery remain largely undeciphered. Scholars debate whether the script represents a local Iberian language influenced by Phoenician or Greek systems, or whether it encodes a unique tongue lost to history. Could these inscriptions, if fully understood, reveal insights into political structures, religious beliefs, or trade practices? Or might they provide evidence of knowledge systems entirely alien to our assumptions about early Iberian societies? The tantalizing possibility that Tartessos held written records of its own worldview, now obscured by time, underscores the civilization's enduring allure. Cultural memory further complicates the story. Legends of Tartessos survived in Greek, Roman, and later Iberian lore, blending history with myth. References to sunken cities, immense treasures, and wise rulers suggest that Tartessos occupied a space both real and symbolic in the imagination of later civilizations. Some researchers have drawn parallels to Atlantis, though such comparisons are speculative and metaphorical rather than literal. Yet the persistence of these stories across centuries points to a civilization that made a profound impression, leaving traces not only in material culture, but also in collective memory. Today, the search for Tartessos continues in both fieldwork and imagination. Archaeologists excavate mounds and river terraces, geologists analyze sedimentary layers for signs of ancient waterways, and linguists study inscriptions for clues to language and meaning. Each discovery, whether a metal ingot, a pottery fragment, or a small burial, adds a piece to the puzzle, yet the overall picture remains incomplete. Tartessos challenges our understanding of history, prompting reflection on the fragility of civilizations and the forces that can erase entire cultures from the physical record while leaving echoes in texts and myths. As the sun sets over the Guadalquivir Valley, casting long shadows across fields and hills, one can almost imagine the world of Tartessos. Merchants unloading silver and tin along riverbanks, artisans hammering gold into ornaments, priests and rulers conducting ceremonies, all amid the fertile plains and bustling ports of a vanished kingdom. Yet these images are only reconstructions, shadows of a reality we can glimpse but never fully know. Tartessos invites contemplation not only of what was, but of what might still lie hidden beneath the earth, waiting for patient discovery. The civilization of Tartessos, like the lost city of Ubar, the Labyrinth of Egypt, the Fuente Magna Bowl, and the tunnels of Derinkuyu, resists easy classification. It exists at the intersection of archaeology, legend, and the imagination, a reminder that human history is neither linear nor fully preserved. What knowledge, cultural achievements, or connections have been lost beneath the rivers and plains of southern Iberia? How much of the past, like Tartessos itself, remains buried, waiting to challenge our understanding of who we are and how civilizations rise and fall? Even in the absence of complete evidence, Tartessos continues to capture the imagination. Its wealth, its supposed grandeur, and its mysterious disappearance provoke reflection on the impermanence of human endeavor, the power of memory, and the fragility of even the most prosperous societies. Perhaps the greatest lesson of Tartessos is the recognition that history is not only what we uncover, but also what remains hidden, waiting to inspire wonder, study, and the enduring quest for understanding. As the night falls over Andalusia, the wind stirring the olive groves and river plains, the question lingers. How much of our shared human story has vanished like Tartessos, leaving behind only faint echoes in text, artifact, and memory? And if so much can disappear without a trace, what other civilizations, knowledge, or mysteries remain hidden beneath the surface of our world, silently awaiting rediscovery by those willing to look beyond the obvious, to explore the shadows, and to listen to the whispers of the past? On a quiet hillside in Turkey, where rolling plains meet rugged mountains and the air is dry with the scent of earth and stone, an archaeological discovery quietly stunned the scholarly world. The object in question is a sarcophagus, carved in stone, aged by centuries, and remarkable for one particular feature. It rests upon 8 intricately sculpted legs. Unlike typical sarcophagi, which are designed to lie flat upon the earth, this one seems to float, elevated on a spider-like support system, its craftsmanship both precise and enigmatic. The discovery, made in the early 21st century during an excavation in the Anatolian region, has captivated historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts, not only for its unusual design but for the questions it raises about the society that created it. At first glance, the sarcophagus is impressive for its sheer size and durability. Carved from a single block of local stone, the vessel measures over 2 meters in length, with sides adorned in reliefs that defy easy interpretation. Each of its 8 legs is not merely functional. They are intricately sculpted, tapering with elegant curvature, almost alive in their realism. Some scholars suggest that the legs are symbolic, perhaps representing cosmic order, divine protection, or the intersection of life and death. Others wonder if the structure reflects practical concerns, perhaps a method to elevate the sarcophagus above damp ground, preserving the body within for generations. Yet the elevated, almost arachnid design is unparalleled in Anatolian archaeology, making the object not only unique, but deeply mysterious. The region where the sarcophagus was found has a long history of human habitation. Anatolia, a crossroads of civilizations, has seen the rise and fall of Hittites, Phrygians, Lydians, and Persians. Tombs, burial mounds, and ceremonial sites are scattered across the landscape, each revealing glimpses of complex societies. Yet the 8-legged sarcophagus stands apart. Its design does not align neatly with known Hittite or Phrygian funerary traditions, nor does it resemble Greek or Roman burial styles that later dominated the area. Could it represent a local, previously unknown culture? Or perhaps a hybrid of influences from neighboring civilizations, an experimental approach to honoring the dead? Analysis of the carvings provides further intrigue. The sarcophagus's sides are adorned with geometric motifs, circular depressions, and linear patterns that seem deliberate but resist clear interpretation. Some researchers propose that these designs encode symbolic or cosmological information, a map of the stars, a calendar, or spiritual pathways for the deceased in the afterlife. Comparisons have been drawn with other Anatolian art, yet nothing quite matches the complexity or abstraction present here. Could the creators have been attempting to preserve knowledge, belief, or ritual in a medium meant to endure across centuries? Or were the designs purely decorative, a reflection of aesthetic preferences that remain lost to us today? The sarcophagus's 8 legs have sparked particular speculation. Some archaeologists suggest a symbolic interpretation associating the number 8 with cycles, regeneration, or divine completeness in ancient Near Eastern cultures. In mythology, creatures with multiple limbs, spiders, serpents, and fantastical beasts, often represent power, protection, or cosmic significance. Could the 8-legged design have been intended to invoke such protective or mystical qualities, shielding the deceased from spiritual or physical harm? Others have ventured more speculative theories. Some suggest that the legs represent constellations, with each limb corresponding to a particular celestial alignment, perhaps part of a funerary ritual tied to astronomical observation. While evidence remains circumstantial, the very presence of these legs invites questions about symbolism, ritual, and the worldview of the people who created the sarcophagus. Historical records provide little context. No surviving text references such a design, and no similar sarcophagi have been definitively identified in the region. This absence complicates interpretation, forcing archaeologists to rely on material analysis, comparative studies, and careful inference. Carbon dating of organic remains found nearby suggests that the tomb may date to between 1200 and 800 BC, a period of regional upheaval and interaction among multiple Anatolian cultures. Could the sarcophagus reflect a transitional phase, where artistic and religious ideas were merging in innovative, experimental forms? Or is it the product of a localized cultural expression, a singular artifact from a society now otherwise lost to history? The craftsmanship itself is extraordinary. Each leg is carved with a precision suggesting advanced knowledge of stonework and structural engineering. Despite their delicate appearance, the supports bear the weight of the massive sarcophagus with remarkable stability. This indicates that the creators had not only artistic skill, but a sophisticated understanding of physics and load distribution. Could the design have served a functional purpose beyond the symbolic, perhaps to elevate the sarcophagus above flooding or damp soil? Or was the engineering itself a statement, a demonstration of skill meant to honor the deceased with both artistry and ingenuity? The context of the find adds another layer of mystery. The tomb was part of a broader necropolis, yet surrounding burials follow more conventional patterns: flat stone slabs, rectangular sarcophagi, and simple burial pits. The 8-legged sarcophagus stands alone in its complexity and daring design. Was it the resting place of a prominent ruler, priest, or individual of exceptional importance? Or might it have served a ceremonial function, perhaps not as a tomb at all, but as a ritual object designed to embody cosmic or spiritual principles? The ambiguity of its purpose continues to intrigue those who study it. Some researchers have noted intriguing parallels between the sarcophagus and artifacts from distant regions. Certain design motifs bear faint resemblance to Bronze Age objects from the Levant, including Palestine, while others echo symbols found in Mediterranean cultures. Could these similarities reflect trade, cultural exchange, or shared symbolic language? Or are they coincidental, a convergence of human creativity in different contexts? The 8-legged design itself has few parallels anywhere, making it one of the most unique funerary objects ever discovered. Modern investigation continues, aided by 3D scanning, photogrammetry, and geophysical surveys. These technologies allow researchers to examine the sarcophagus in unprecedented detail without disturbing its fragile structure. Subtle scratches, chisel marks, and wear patterns offer clues to its creation and use, yet they also deepen the mystery. The sarcophagus seems both familiar and alien, a tangible object that defies simple categorization. Each new analysis raises as many questions as it answers, highlighting the limits of our understanding of this extraordinary artifact. The sarcophagus also invites reflection on the cultural and spiritual lives of its creators. Its care, complexity, and preservation suggest reverence for the dead, a concern for the journey beyond life, and an understanding of art as a medium to communicate across time. What beliefs, fears, or aspirations led a society to conceive of such a structure? How did the living perceive death, and what role did ritual and symbolism play in shaping their monuments? The eight-legged sarcophagus is not merely stone. It is a conversation across millennia, an invitation to consider the worldview of those who inhabited a world both familiar and distant from our own. Despite the extensive study, the sarcophagus resists definitive explanation. Its combination of unique design, complex craftsmanship, and symbolic ambiguity ensures that it remains a subject of fascination. Could other examples exist, buried beneath Anatolian soil, waiting to be discovered? Or is this truly a singular object, a masterpiece from a lost culture whose knowledge and tradition have vanished with the centuries? Its mystery is compounded by the absence of written records or inscriptions that might explain its origins or purpose. The eight-legged sarcophagus, like the Tartessos Civilization, Derinkuyu's tunnels, the Cochno Stone, and the Fuente Magna Bowl, serves as a reminder that human history is layered with enigmas. Each artifact, each site, each object holds stories, skills, and beliefs that have been partially lost or obscured by time. The sarcophagus invites us to reflect on the interplay between art, ritual, and survival, to consider the creativity and complexity of societies that flourished long before the written record could capture their existence fully. As the sun sets over the Anatolian plains, casting long shadows across rolling hills and rocky outcrops, one can almost imagine the sarcophagus in its original setting. Perhaps it rested in a sacred chamber, surrounded by attendants and ritual offerings, a silent witness to ceremonies meant to honor life, death, and the cosmic order. Or perhaps it stood alone, a solitary monument to an individual whose memory demanded extraordinary measures to preserve. The stone itself bears witness to hands long vanished, to minds and beliefs that may never be fully comprehended. Ultimately, the mystery of the eight-legged sarcophagus is not simply a question of archaeology. It is a question of human imagination and the enduring desire to understand our predecessors. What compelled the creators to conceive of a tomb unlike any other? What knowledge, ritual, or symbolism did they embed in its stone? And how many other marvels remain hidden beneath the soil, silent and waiting, challenging us to reconsider the narrative of human history? In contemplating this singular artifact, one is reminded that history is rarely linear or complete. It is layered, complex, and often elusive. The sarcophagus rests quietly, its 8 legs grounding it in both stone and mystery, a testament to human ingenuity, creativity, and reverence. And as night falls over the Anatolian hills, the object invites us to ponder the unseen, the unknown, and the forgotten, reminding us that for every discovery, there remain countless questions, and for every mystery revealed, many more are waiting to be uncovered.